Chapter 1045. This feeling was very clear. There seemed to be an indescribable lingering touch between her lips and teeth, penetrating her nerves layer by layer. Shinmanting opened her eyes with difficulty. At first glance, she saw the extremely familiar face, which was also the most terrible nightmare. Shen Luoan. When Shinmanting saw the face in front of her, she was shocked. She struggled with her hands, but was firmly held down by him. Shen Luo and looked at Shun Manting in front of him with his gentle eyes. With a smile on his face, he squinted his eyes and said softly, "What? Didn't you just call me very happily?" Shun Manting felt like she was struck by lightning. She called him? Impossible. I didn't. Shen Luo and looked at Shun Manting in front of him and raised his eyebrows with great interest. He whispered, "It's a pity that I didn't record it. Otherwise, I would let you see how much you love me. You even call my name in your dreams." Impossible. You're dreaming. Shin Manting denied with a look of certainty. Unless I'm crazy, I wouldn't call your name. Shen Luo's eyes dimmed. He slightly approached her and said dangerously, "Are you sure? Are you crazy? You did call me that just now." In fact, she was calling Oming just now. Shen Luo and was very sure that Shin Manting didn't love Oming. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so calm these days and wouldn't have stayed at home. But now that he heard Shin Manting calling Oming's name in her sleep, Shen Luo's original certainty suddenly began to waver. When Shin Manting heard this, she struggled hard and pushed him away. But Shen Luo's body was still on top of her and never left her body. Damn it. Shin Manting gritted her teeth and sneered. Really? Maybe I'm really crazy. Even if I love Oming, I can't fall in love with a big pervert like you. When Shen Luo heard this, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and there seemed to be a penetrating cold light in his eyes. When Shen Manting met Shen Luo's gaze, she was a little scared, but she quickly shrank her neck. Looking at Shen Luo, she summoned up her courage and provoked, "Why? Don't you let me tell the truth?" Shen Manting, Shen Luo, said through gritted teeth. It was as if the words were squeezed out from between his teeth. Just when she thought he was going to scold her, he smirked coldly. He lowered his head and attacked her snow-white chest. A corner of her delicate and fair skin was gently sucked out. Her whole body trembled violently. Then, as if it was a conditioned reflex, she struggled and shouted, "Shun, ugh!" Shen Luo covered her mouth and warned her cruelly, "You want to scream? Then how are you going to explain that I raped you?" Shin Manting's breathing quickened, and she struggled unwillingly. "Shoo!" Shen Luo smiled warmly, as if he was still the harmless, gentle, and elegant young man. But it was this man who looked so pretentious, as her elder brother, who did such a thing to her. Don't be impulsive. No matter how much the family dotes on you, you're just an adopted daughter. If I say that you seduced me into your room, who do you think Grandma will believe? Shin Manting didn't move and stared at him in disbelief. Good sister, don't move. Don't scream. Shoo! Shin Luo gently released his hand and looked at her with a smile on his lips. Shin Manting panicked and asked, "What do you want to do? Do you still need to ask?" "Sleep with you." Dash. Chapter 1046. Shin Manting's eyes widened, and she desperately shrank back. However, she couldn't escape. Shin Luo sealed her lips, not leaving a single gap between them. Shin Manting didn't dare to scream. Old Mrs. Shun had been very kind to her, but if Shen Luo made a false accusation, the Shun family would definitely not protect her. The Shin family couldn't afford to lose face. Shen Luo was the pride of the Shun family, and there couldn't be any stain on it. But did she deserve to be bullied by him? Shin Manting's eyes were red, and tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. Why? Why would you rather give yourself to Oming? Why are you so unwilling to let me touch you? Why are you willing to give yourself to Oming? Huh? Shin Luo pressed her legs and hands hard and pressed her under his body. Which part of me is inferior to Oming? Shin Manting shook her head desperately, and her face was rubbed by his palms. While struggling, a sharp pain suddenly attacked her. Shin Manting's hands suddenly pulled the sleeves of his shirt and shook her head violently. However, Shen Luo and didn't have the slightest mercy, and he attacked her forcefully. Shen Manting's tears flowed more and more, and she bit his palm with great strength. Shen Luo frowned, but he didn't withdraw his hand. His breathing was slightly rapid, and he sighed and lifted her up. Shen Manting felt like a rag doll, which was casually played with and then thrown on the bed to fend for itself. After Shen Luo tidied her up, he began to tidy himself up. Shen Luo looked at Shen Manting, who was lying on the bed with a blank look on her face. He squeezed the last button on his shirt and glanced at her from the corner of his eye. He smiled warmly and said, "You really didn't let me down, my good sister." He was satisfied with her chastity, satisfied with her jerkiness. "As long as you say it, I can marry you at any time." Shen Luo looked down at her from above. His gaze was gentle, and his white shirt made him look even more like a handsome older brother next door. Unfortunately, he was her older brother. Shen Manting silently shed tears and closed her eyes. Shen Luo couldn't maintain the smile on his face. He turned around, opened the door, and walked out. Yi Yuyu was about to deliver the meal to Shen Manting. When she saw him coming out of Shen Manting's room, she was slightly surprised and shouted, "Brother Luo, did you go to see Manting?" Shen Luo took her hand and glanced at the tray in her hand. He quickly took it and said, "Well, I'll send it over. I've just persuaded her." Yeah. After Yi Yuyu handed the tray to him, she felt a little strange. Shen Luo cared too much about his sister, who wasn't even his biological sister, was an illusion. Yi Yuyu frowned and followed them. She said, "I haven't seen my aunt for a few days. I'll go too." "There's no need for that. You go ahead with your work. We'll have dinner together later," Shen Luo said nonchalantly. When Yi Yuyu heard that, her eyes lit up. This was the first time Shen Luo had suggested having dinner with her. Nodding repeatedly, Yi Yuyu was a little surprised and said, "Then I'll go help in the kitchen." "Okay, be careful." Yi Yuyu's heart was bursting with joy. She nodded her head and, like a happy bird, turned around and walked away gracefully. Shen Luo opened the door again, but found that it couldn't be opened. "Is it locked from the inside?" Shen Luo curled his lips and murmured, "Naive." He took the key from his pocket and opened the door, but found that Shen Manting was no longer in bed. Chapter 10:47. Shen Luo had an ominous feeling in his heart. After putting down the food, he knocked on the door of the bathroom. He wanted to open it, but it was locked from the inside. He tried to twist it, but it wouldn't budge. "Manting!" Shen Luo knocked on the door and shouted, "Are you inside? Open the door." However, it was still quiet. Suddenly, the sound of something falling to the ground came from inside. It was like a thunderclap that hit Shen Luo's heart. Shen Luo was shocked and knocked on the door, but there was no response. Someone outside heard the noise and quickly rushed over. But no matter how much he knocked on the door and shouted, the person inside didn't come out to open the door. Shen Luo's face darkened. He had a bad feeling in his heart. He growled, "Get out of the way." As he spoke, he lifted the solid wood stool in the room and smashed it against the lock of the bathroom door. It didn't budge, so Shen Luo smashed it a few more times before the lock showed signs of loosening. He slammed the door open and saw Shen Manting leaning against the glass door of the shower. There was a bottle of shower gel and shampoo in front of her, and there was foam hanging from the corner of her mouth. The liquid in the two bottles had been emptied. Seeing this scene, Shen Luo's head suddenly shook, and a large blank suddenly attacked him, destroying all his consciousness and reason without a trace. "Oh my God!" There was a cry of alarm, and the people behind him suddenly ran to where Shen Manting was. When they saw her like this, they were shocked and shouted, "Oh my God! An ambulance! Call an ambulance!" For a moment, the scene was chaotic. Shen Luo was stunned on the spot. He saw and heard people running around, but he didn't know what to do at all. In other words, Shen Luo was already dumbfounded. She committed suicide? I just did that to her. So, is she going to commit suicide? Impossible. The Shen Manting that Shen Luo knew wasn't such a person. He was at a loss as to what to do. He took Shen Manting's body from Sister Zhang's hands and stood up with her in his arms. His heart was filled with panic and emptiness. He shouted, "Get out of my way!" Paris, France. In the oversized presidential suite, a man and a woman were entangled passionately. The sound of their rapid breathing was particularly eye-catching in the quiet room. Very soon, however, his cell phone rang. In this originally spacious space, the ringtone was even more reverberating. Ming raised his head and glanced at his mother in the midst of his busy schedule. Ming gently released Lily and said, "It's my mom. I need to take a call." Lily was lying on the bed. Her clothes were messy. Her bra had been untied and hung loosely. On the other hand, Ming was only left with a shirt and trousers. His thick winter clothes had been taken off. After Ming calmed his breathing, he picked up the phone and said, "Mom." Chao Ziqing sounded like she was crying as she shouted, "Lilo, come back quickly. It's all your fault, you little rascal." Chao Ziqing rarely cried, and it was extremely rare to see her sobbing like she did today. Ming's heart skipped a beat. He calmed down and asked, "Mom, tell me slowly. What happened?" Chapter 1048. Hearing his mother's words, Ming retorted, "How is that possible?" He subconsciously thought of Shun Manting's arrogant, beautiful, and insufferably arrogant face. Shun Manting committed suicide? How is that possible? Ming would never believe that Shun Manting committed suicide because Ming ran away from the wedding. However, at this critical juncture, everyone would naturally attribute Shun Manting's suicide to Ming. Even Ming's parents and the Shun family would be no exception. However, Ming didn't think it was that simple. Shun Manting didn't really like him. How could she have committed suicide because of his rejection? That's impossible. Something's wrong. Hearing Ming's words, Chao Ziqing was even angrier. She scolded, "What's wrong with Manting?" She was well-behaved and sensible. She was beautiful and had a good family background. More importantly, she loved you wholeheartedly. Why did you have to be entangled with that mistress? Now, everyone is saying that you abandoned Manting for your mistress, which led to her suicide. Xiao, I thought you were no longer a child and had your own ideas about everything you did. But how could you be so wrong this time? Gu Nianxin thought, how do you expect us to face them in the future? Huh? Ming pursed his lips when he heard Chao Ziqing's words. When he was about to speak, his mother interrupted him. Chao Ziqing went on and on. Towards the end, she burst into tears and shouted, "Manting is such a good girl. It's hard to come by someone like her. If anything happens to Manting, will you be able to live with your conscience?" Shen Luowen asked. "Mom, calm down. I don't think it's that simple." Regardless of whether it's that simple or not, the O family has become the target of everyone's disdain. "Where are you now?" "Paris, you want to find that girl, didn't you?" Chao Ziqing's words were harsh and angry. Ming didn't speak, but his attitude was tantamount to acquiescence. Good, good, good," Chao Ziqing said 3 times in a row, each louder than the last. Finally, she shouted, "Come back here right now." Chao Ziqing's angry voice came from the phone. When Ming was about to speak, Chao Ziqing had already hung up. His voice was so loud that even Lily could hear him clearly. Ming helplessly put his hands down and looked at Lily in front of him. His original interest in her was gone. Lily frowned and asked, "What's going on?" "Shun Manting committed suicide. We don't know if she's dead or alive. Our family has probably been bombarded by the media." It was not hard to imagine the complexity and danger involved. He got up and said, "I have to go back first." As he spoke, he put on his clothes, tidied up his shirt, and buttoned up the buttons one by one. However, looking at Ming, it seemed that he had no intention of bringing her along. Lily felt a lump in her throat and asked, "Aren't you going to bring me along?" Chapter 1049. When Lily heard that, she felt a little lost. Ming fastened his cufflinks and looked at her with a pair of peach blossom eyes. He held her face in his hands and continued, "Lily, now I'm not sure that I can protect you. When I go back, I will be criticized and my reputation will be ruined. If Shun Manting is rescued, I will tell her clearly. But if Shun Manting dies, I will be the biggest sinner in everyone's eyes. Moreover, behind this big sinner, Yu Lily's existence was probably more important than Shin Manting's life and death. Although O Ming felt that the reason behind Shin Manting's suicide was certainly not simple, many Chinese netizens did not pay much attention to whether it was caused by O Ming's escape from the marriage. For Chinese netizens, joining in the fun was more important than any justice. The result that everyone had determined at the beginning was what everyone hoped for. O Ming was very clear about the possible results. At this moment, O Ming had already prepared for the worst. He absolutely could not let Yu Lily return to China. Looking at Yu Lily, O Ming said word by word, "I will solve everything and then come to Paris to pick you up. During this time, you will live here and don't go back. Remember." Yu Lily pursed her lips and nodded. O Ming gently kissed her on the forehead. Then he put on his clothes and walked out. In China, Shin Manting's suicide caused a stir. Because it was discovered quickly, after some rescue and gastric lavage, Shin Manting's condition was not serious. Shen Luo, Anne's mood, was originally panicked and helpless. When Shin Manting woke up, his mind gradually became clear. Looking at Shin Manting lying on the bed with her eyes closed and face pale, Shen Luo Anne's anger was even more uncontrollable. Shin Manting had clearly calculated the time her family would deliver the food and deliberately locked the door from the inside. After that, she put on such a show. Her goal was to expose her actions and stop her. In this way, her suicide would not be successful, but at the same time, it could ignite the public opinion on the internet and push O Ming to the forefront. Retreating in order to advance, O Ming fell into the land of injustice. Shin Manting's suicide had already been the subject of much discussion, and the attention on the matter skyrocketed in an instant. In this way, Shin Manting would naturally be labeled as a victim. At the same time, she would be in a vulnerable position. If Shen Luo leaked anything at this time, it wouldn't just be about Shin Manting and O Ming. Shin Manting's move killed 3 birds with 1 stone. She pushed herself to the surface, warned Shen Luo, and took revenge on O Ming. No one would dare to touch her easily. So, Shin Manting is so smart. Shen Luo looked at Shin Manting and sneered. After staring at her for a long time, he finally turned around and walked out. Yi Yu arrived at that moment. She saw Shen Luo and asked, "How is Andy?" However, Shen Luo didn't spare her a glance and quickly walked away. When O Ming returned to Kingstown, he was surrounded by a large group of media. "Mr. O, you came back from Miss Yu's place, right? What do you think of Miss Shen's suicide? I heard that you've been with Miss Yu for many years. You've been two-timing all along. Is that true?" All kinds of media platforms were talking at the same time, but O Ming never said a word. Chapter 10:50. Under the protection of the bodyguards, O Ming quickly left the airport. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word. After getting in the car, O Ming left. The news of O Ming's return to China exploded on the internet again. Netizens immediately flooded Weibo, and all kinds of news were on the hot search list. The title of the first hot topic on Weibo was impressively eye-catching. The young master of the O Group returns before the new year and is suspected to visit his ex-fiancée. Below, a large number of keyboard warriors flooded the screen, but all of them were cursing. What were you doing earlier? Running away from marriage for a mistress. Now that you have committed suicide, you come back to pretend? Bah! A bitch and a dog will last forever. Shin Manting has waited for you for 4 years. Where can you find such a woman? You are blind. From today on, boycott all the products under the O Group, including TT. Not only on the internet, but even around the O family, Xiao Ziqing's friends and neighbors gave the O family a strange look. On the way back, O Ming saw a lot of news. His heart sank, but he also felt a little lucky. Fortunately, he didn't let Yu Manting come back to China. Otherwise, things would definitely become more complicated. O Ming went to the hospital to see Shin Manting immediately. Outside the hospital, there were reporters squatting at the door of the hospital, waiting for O Ming to appear. As soon as they saw his car arrive, the group of reporters rushed forward, scrambling to stretch out their microphones, and asked sharp and sensitive questions. "Mr. O Ming, are you here to repent? Mr. O Ming, why did you run away from marriage? I heard that you did this because of a mistress you have kept for many years? Mr. Oming, I heard that Miss Shun is still in a coma in the hospital, and her life is uncertain. Do you feel guilty in your heart? Mr. Oming, what are you going to do next? Do you want to break off the engagement with Miss Shin this time? The bodyguards cleared the way. Oming, wearing black sunglasses, was expressionless and silent. After entering the hospital, Oming was taken by the bodyguards to the direction of the VIP ward where Shun Manting was. On the way there, he met someone who was reasonable, yet unexpected. Shin Luo, and was wearing a long, cream-colored windbreaker, black trousers, and a white shirt. He looked a little thin in such a cold winter. On that gentle and handsome face, there was obvious exhaustion. Green stubble had appeared. When he saw Oming, he was slightly surprised. The two men stood in the corridor. They stopped and looked at each other. Oming took off his sunglasses and looked at Shun Luo and in front of him. There was a dangerous look in his eyes as he said, "Let's talk." It was not a question, but an order. How could Shin Luo and not hear the displeasure in Oming's tone? He smiled and nodded. "Let's go." The two of them went up to the rooftop of the hospital. There was no wind today, and the sun was shining brightly, but the cold air was still raging. Oming looked at Shun Luo, who was wearing thin clothes in front of him, and said, "Shin Manting wouldn't commit suicide because I ran away from the wedding. What did you say to her?" Shin Luo smiled and raised his eyebrows. "You're wrong. She committed suicide because she couldn't withstand the public opinion and psychological pressure. Do you think you know her so well?" Chapter 1051. In order to escape from him, what Shin Manting did was crueler than he could imagine. Shin Luo's gentle eyes became gloomy. He looked at Oming with his lips slightly raised and said, "Do you come back now to marry her?" Oming smiled. "Will you agree?" The smile on Shin Luo's face gradually disappeared. He looked at him and slightly raised his eyebrows. "Try. I can't afford to try." Oming took out a cigarette from his pocket, took out one, and slowly lit it. He slowly said, "I already have one. I'll leave this one for you." As he spoke, he slowly exhaled a pale white smoke. "My woman is still waiting for me to go back and marry her." Shin Luo joked, "I didn't expect you to be so loyal. It's easy to say, but it's not the same as you. You like one and marry the other." "Oh." Oming looked at him coldly. "I'm still curious. What did you do to Shin Manting? Don't say stupid things like running away from marriage. I don't believe it." When Shin Luo was about to speak, his cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID, but his expression did not change. He continued, "No matter what the reason is, no one will suspect me. You better take care of yourself." After answering the phone, Shin Luo turned to look at Oming with a deep meaning. After hanging up the phone, Shin Luo looked at Oming and said, "Shin Manting woke up, and your mother is also there." As he spoke, he turned around and walked down the stairs. Oming looked at his back, and his eyes darkened. Seeing Shin Luo's reaction, even if Oming was stupid and naive, he knew that it must have something to do with this guy. But what did Shin Luo do? Oming's matter was very sensational. Since she came to Paris, it was the first time she turned on the internet, which she hadn't used for a long time. She randomly searched, and all kinds of news about Oming popped up. Looking at the striking headlines, Yulili clicked on them and found that many things were related to her. Deep Dig, the mistress of O's young master, is the editor of his comics. Oming's mistress revealed. The woman who defeated Shin's daughter is actually an orphan. Counting the women who have nothing but easily capture the favor of the rich second generation. Did the people in the country care so much about her now? If she went back, she would probably be drowned by the saliva of a single person. The reputation of being a mistress was really hateful in the hearts of the keyboard warriors in China. Yulili knew that it was safest for her to stay in China, but she couldn't help but feel disappointed. When would she be able to stand beside Oming openly? Suddenly, a message popped up on Weibo, and the text shocked Yulili. Oming's mistress's Weibo exposure. Yuli, miss you. What is it like to force the legal wife to commit suicide? #topic. Shun's daughter's suicide #. There was a picture below, which was one of the few selfies that Oh Ming had taken with Yu Lily. Yu Lily smiled like a flower, and Oh Ming, who was wearing a burgundy suit, stood behind her, looking at her with a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. They were so close that the tip of Oh Ming's nose almost touched her hair. This was a photo from 5 years ago. At that time, Yu Lily had a young and childish face. Chapter 1052. Stealthily comes stealthily go. Too shameless, the mistress should go to hell. All expectations fail. 2333. Hee hee, she looks young, but how can she be so coquettish? Fox, the 11 hides in the world. She is young but has a big heart. It is really easy to be a mistress. Sure enough, without the education of parents, she has no bottom line. Maline shopping agent. The lip color of the mistress in the picture is the classic look of the C family. I want a private message. Yu Lily looked at the Weibo and refreshed it. All of a sudden, there were several more comments, each of which was scolding her. Yu Lily felt uncomfortable. Suddenly, her mobile phone vibrated and she received a private message from Weibo. Unfollowed person's information. You look good. You can seduce Oh Ming. You must be good at kung fu, right? How much money does Oh Ming give you a month? I will give you double. Yu Lily was furious and opened the dialog box to edit. Go to hell. However, before she sent it out, Yu Lily deleted those words one by one. No, I can't be angry. I can't admit it. However, there were several private messages. Shameless mistress, go to hell. Are you the mistress? You can do anything at such a young age, but you have to destroy other people's family. Smile, smile, go to hell. Don't let me see you, or I will beat you every time I see you. Picture. The picture sent was a selfie of Yu Lily. Her face was painted with delicate makeup, and she looked high-spirited, petite, and beautiful. This Yu Lily was the Yu Lily from 5 years ago. Yu Lily browsed and found that there were a lot of replies to her Weibo, but all of them were scolding her. She was angry, but she couldn't show up. If Yu Lily clicked like or commented, she would definitely become the target of public criticism without hesitation. Yu Lily simply logged out of the account and threw the phone aside. But soon, she thought of the bug in her mind. Now Oh Ming should have returned to China, and he should go to the hospital to see Shin Manting as soon as possible. Yu Lily picked up the phone again and opened it. Sure enough, she heard the voice coming over there. There was the voice of a middle-aged woman and Shin Manting. Auntie, I'm sorry. Yu Lily could clearly hear the sobs in Shin Manting's voice. I'm sorry. I really can't take it anymore. These days, everyone has been sympathizing with me. Just before Oh Ming ran away from the wedding, I thought I could be a good daughter-in-law to you, to be filial to you, to respect you, and to live with Oh Ming. But I really didn't expect that Oh Ming would run away from the wedding. Previously, I told my classmates and friends that I would have a happy life after marriage, but now I can't do it anymore. This feeling is like being stripped alive and thrown in front of them. Manting, the middle-aged woman, also cried and said with I and said I and. Chapter 1053. The conversation continued, and Yu Lily guessed that this middle-aged woman was undoubtedly Oh Ming's mother. She seemed to really like Shin Manting. Listening to her tone, it was as if she was feeling sorry for her own daughter. Shin Manting and Oh Ming's mother already had such a deep relationship. That's right, it's been 4 years. How many 4 years can there be in a life? In these 4 years, Shin Manting had been with Oh Ming's mother as her future daughter-in-law. Yu Lily couldn't compare with her at all. However, before Oh Ming's mother could make the call, she stopped. Then she heard Oh Ming shout, oh, it was Oh Ming. And Shin Luo and, you're awake? Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Shin Luo and asked several questions, but Shin Manting didn't say anything. The situation seemed a little awkward, and, at the same time, she heard light footsteps coming from behind. It was Oh Ming's footsteps. Yu Lily pricked up her ears to listen to the movement over there. It seemed that there were a lot of people coming. Now, Yu Lily knew that it was Shin Luo and Oh Ming's mother, and Shin Manting. Mom, I'll talk to her. You go back first. I'll come home later. Oh Ming's voice was familiar, but distant. Yu Lily was glad that her little virus hadn't been scanned clearly. Otherwise, she wouldn't have known what they were talking about. When Xiao Ziqing heard her son's words, she looked at Shun Manting, and Ming stood up, turned around, and saw Shen Luoen's obviously not very good expression. She smiled and said, Luoen, it's been hard on you these days. You've been by Manting's side. You're welcome. Manting is my sister. It's my duty. Shen Luoen's face was gentle, and he nodded slightly. Xiao Ziqing nodded and smiled a little gratified. She said, Manting is really lucky to have such a good brother like you. Good brother. Shen Manting heard Xiao Ziqing's praise for Shen Luo, and her hands under the quilt slightly clenched. The hatred in her heart suddenly overflowed in her eyes, and overflowed to the tip of her eyebrows. When Shen Luo heard this, he glanced at Shun Manting, who was lying on the bed. The smile on his face widened, and he turned his gaze back to her. He nodded slightly and said, You flatter me. Go out, big brother, Shun Manting said without looking up. Her voice was a little dry as she said, Auntie, thank you for coming to see me. Manting, there's no need to stand on ceremony between us, Xiao Ziqing said with a straight face. Xiao, remember to come home when you're done. Got it. Ming waved his hand. Ming watched as Xiao Ziqing and Shen Luo walked out together. He then sat down on the chair that Xiao Ziqing had been sitting on. Shen Manting, what exactly do you want? You know that I hate you. Don't you think it's despicable of you to use such means? As soon as Ming spoke, he did not hesitate to ridicule her. When Shen Manting heard that, she looked up at him. This was Ming's true colors, especially when he was in front of her. For 4 years, he didn't hide it at all. He clearly showed his disgust for her in front of her. He didn't even want to pretend, which was very annoying. However, she had no choice. Ming, Shen Manting called out, and her eyes were pleading. Marry me, okay? Dash. Chapter 10:54. Her voice was neither high nor low, but when she looked at him with a pair of slightly tired and listless eyes, there was a hint of pleading in her eyes. Ming looked at her and smiled. Shen Manting, I said that I wouldn't marry you. Do you think that by committing suicide, you can force me to marry you? I beg you, Ming, I beg you, marry me. Shen Manting leaned toward Ming and grabbed his sleeves with both hands. Her eyes were full of helplessness. Why are you doing this? You promised me before that I would help you save Annie and you would marry me. I have waited for you for 4 years. Can't you pretend? It doesn't matter if you don't love me after marriage. It doesn't matter if we can only have a marriage of convenience. Marry me, and I will help you. Why me? Ming was puzzled. He looked at Shun Manting coldly and said, You know that I won't have feelings for you. Why do you like me? You and Shen Luoen? Hearing the name Shen Luoen, Shen Manting's face turned pale, and she shouted out reflexively, No. No? What kind of answer is that? Seeing her reaction, Ming felt that there was definitely more to it than meets the eye. What happened between you and Shen Luoen? Ming looked at her hand that was pulling his sleeves, and his eyes were slightly deep. He continued to say, Shen Manting, you are a smart person. This suicide is definitely not because of me. No one was stupid. Shen Manting used him more than she loved him. Ming was clear about that. Shen Manting also clearly realized that Ming was talking about suicide, not suicide. In other words, he might have already noticed something. A scheming glint flashed across her beautiful big eyes. A plan had already sprouted in her heart. Seeing that she did not speak, Ming continued, If I can run away from marriage once, I will run away a second time. No one will be happy in a forced marriage, and you don't like me at all. Why bother to force us to be together like this? Ming, why don't you make a deal? Shen Manting looked at Ming and said, Don't you like that mistress? That woman surnamed you. You can keep her by your side. If we get married, I will absolutely not hinder you. I just want the title of Mrs. O. You can live with her and be with her every day. I won't mind, I mind. Ming's face darkened. Why should my woman be wronged? You are wrong, Ming. You are not wronging her, but me. Do you think that if you don't marry of me, you can marry her? Don't you know how much your mother values family and background? If you really want to be with that woman, you won't be able to get past your mother. She sneered and said, Even if you don't marry me, Zhang Manting and Li Manting will replace me tomorrow and become your wife. You of any one of you of you. Shin of shun of her. Her words made Ming's face darkened. I'm the only one who can do that. I agree to this marriage of convenience. This is already my biggest concession. I just don't have a title. If that woman really loves you and wants to be with you, she won't care about these things on the surface, right? Shin of you, Lily's heart, clearly, like a knife, cut again and again. Chapter 1055. Shin Manting's words were very reasonable, but it was also a very real problem. You Lily had nothing. How could she be worthy of Ming? In other words, even if you Lily's parents were alive, how could they compare with Shin Manting? The Shin family might not be as rich as the O family, but as a famous family in the capital, many people couldn't compare with them. How could a family like the O family not like such a daughter-in-law? If that woman really loves you and wants to be with you, she won't care about these things on the surface, right? Shin Manting's words were like pearls. What Shin Manting was talking about was the status. If she loved him, would she really not care about these things? But she cared. She was damn concerned and damn greedy. Was it because she didn't love him enough? Lily's eyes looked down, slightly dark. Shin Manting's voice fell, her eyes fixed on Ming, and she continued to say, if she doesn't want to, it can only mean that she doesn't love you enough. Or, she is with you for your money. It's a good chance to test her. You're wrong. Ming interrupted her, looked at Shin Manting, and said seriously, the more I love someone, the more I want to give her all the good things. My wife can only be her. I love her, and I can only have her. Shin Manting heard this and snorted. Ming, it's not appropriate to say this in front of me. According to my understanding of you, you are not suitable to say this kind of sour smell of love. It's disgusting. Whether you believe it or not, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Shin Manting, let's just leave it at that. There's no need to entangle each other any further. Ming pulled his hand back and said coldly, Shin Luo treats you very well. Cherish him. Ming, you are crazy. He is my brother. Even though what he had done to her had long surpassed the boundaries of siblings. Thinking of what he did to her that day, Shin Manting couldn't help but clench her teeth, and a sense of shame and taboo suddenly swept over her. In the past few days in a coma, Shin Manting had been having a dream. A nightmare in which she fell into the punishment of God, fell into hell, and was despised by thousands of people. In the dream, Yu asked her hysterically why she did this. Shin Manting was speechless, and the embarrassment in her heart was brought from the dream to reality. Especially when she saw Yu. Shin Manting didn't dare to look at her eyes, and she didn't dare to face Yu's kindness. He narrowed his eyes and said, you know that you and Shin Luo and are not related by blood at all. You can't call it a relationship at all. Even if you really have a shameful relationship. Shut up. Shin Manting reacted violently. She looked up and shouted, you're the one who has a shameful relationship. Ming was interrupted. He narrowed his eyes and looked at her suspiciously. Chapter 1056. Are you threatening me? I'm stating the facts. I think you have already experienced the power of public opinion in China. I don't need to remind you how unlucky you can be. You should go and come back to me after thinking about it. No, I'll tell you the answer now. Ming looked at Shin Manting coldly and said word by word, I can only have one wife in my life, one woman, and that is you, Lily. I can't marry you, and I can't marry other women. I'll go back and deal with my mother myself. You don't have to worry about it. While speaking, Ming had been paying attention to Shin Manting's expression. Sure enough, Shin Manting's expression was very ugly. Seeing her expression, Ming looked at her coldly, but suddenly he seemed to think of something and said, oh, by the way, it was not my idea to run away from the marriage. You don't know that, do you? When Shin Manting heard this, her eyes narrowed and she looked up at him. I made a deal with Shin Luo. Ming smiled, and then turned to open the door of the ward. What do you mean? Shin Manting asked, but Ming had no intention of answering and had gone out in the blink of an eye. He made a deal with Shin Luo, and Did Ming run away from the marriage because of the deal he made with Shen Luoan? Shen Manting's heart trembled. It was as if all the doubts and suspicions in her mind had been fused together in an instant. The truth of the matter immediately became clear. The door of the ward was gently closed, making a slight sound. Shen Manting looked in the direction of Ming's departure and understood everything in her heart. Despicable. Her anger seemed to be ignited, and in an instant, it was a raging fire, completely releasing the hatred that she had suppressed. Ah! Shen Manting screamed and slapped her thigh with both hands, shouting, "Beast, beast!" He clearly said that before she got married, he would never interfere in her affairs, and he would never interfere in her life. Now, there were only a few days before the new year, and Shen Luo had not done any of the things he promised. While Shen Manting was angry, she also felt a deep sense of helplessness. So what if he didn't do it? So what if he changed his mind? Shen Manting had no way at all. She was a foster orphan, and because of the old lady of the Shun family, she became the daughter of the Shun family. The Shun family did not mind having another mouth to eat, and Shen Longwei did not mind having another daughter. However, she couldn't help but mind losing this family. After living for more than 20 years, she finally had a complete family. She cherished it more than anyone else. The Shen family and Shen Luo were bound together for good or ill. If Shen Luo hadn't gone overboard, she wouldn't have come up with this idea to warn Shen Luo and not to act rashly. However, this was just a delaying tactic. If Ming insisted on not marrying her, based on the current reputation of the Shun family and the current rumors, they would definitely not be able to count on a family of equal social status. But with the Shun family's reputation, they definitely couldn't find someone with an ordinary status. The door to the ward was gently pushed open. Shen Manting looked up and saw someone she hadn't expected at all. Yi Yu saw the tears on Shen Manting's face. She turned around and closed the door. After locking it, she walked over to Shen Manting's bed and sat down. Chapter 10:57. Yi Yu came in and looked at Shen Manting. She pulled a stool and sat on the edge of her bed. Shen Manting felt even more guilty when she saw Yi Yu's attitude. Aunt. Yi Yu's expression looked very calm. She still had a soft face, and she seemed to be at peace with the world. Yi Yu was a very good person and a very good woman. She was tough and patient. For a long time, no matter how Yi Yu was bullied and ridiculed by the old lady of the Shun family, she never retorted or became impatient. There was only one reason, and that was Shen Luoan. Shen Manting saw her insistence on Shen Luoan. If Yi Yu knew that Shen Luo and I had done that kind of thing, would she still continue to stay in the Shen family? If it was because of me that Yi Yu and Shen Luo divorced, Yi Yu would be very sad, wouldn't she? Thinking of this, Shen Manting was a little restless. Are you feeling better? Yi Yu reached out and touched her forehead, saying, Brother Luo has been by your side these days. Now that you have woken up, he finally went back. If he didn't go back, I think he would become an immortal. Shen Manting's heart was even more shocked, and her eyes became evasive. What does Yi Yu mean by that? Could it be that she sensed something? Sister-in-law, Aunt, you interrupted Shen Manting and shouted, I ordered takeout for you. Brother Luo said that you like to eat the food of GB restaurant, so I ordered a few of their signature dishes. You should like it. Yi Yu said with a smile, but Shen Manting felt that Yi Yu's words were meaningful. Sister-in-law, thank you. Shen Manting lowered her head slightly, but couldn't help looking up at her, trying to find something wrong with her face. You have been working hard these days. You have to take care of me while working, and it's okay. Yi Yu looked at her with a smile. But you have a really good relationship with Brother Luo, and I really envy you. Fortunately, I know that you are brother and sister. Otherwise, I will definitely be very jealous of you. Brother Luo has never been so good to me. Shen Manting's heart sank. There was too much information hidden in Yi Yu's words. Was she warning him? Or could it be that Yi Yu was simply narrating the story? Shen Manting wasn't sure. She smiled sheepishly and said, Sister-in-law, Maybe it's because you and Big Brother had just gotten married, so your feelings for each other aren't very deep. Perhaps, although, Yu laughed bitterly. I've known him since I was a teenager, and I've been married for half a year. You've only been back for 7 or 8 years. Is this the difference between us living under the same roof? Sister-in-law, okay, you rest. I still have to work. I have to shoot a variety show tonight. I'll come to see you after work. All right. Yu stood up, slung her bag over her shoulder, and walked out. Yu had just stepped out of the hospital when she saw Shun Luo and returning from afar. He was still wearing the same clothes, and his face didn't look any different from usual. It was as gentle as jade, just like the big brother who often solved math problems for her. However, at this moment, he returned to Shun Manting's ward. Even if they were siblings, shouldn't a married brother and an unmarried sister maintain some distance? Chapter 1058. In the ward, Shun Manting's ears finally quieted down. She picked up her mobile phone and casually scrolled through it. She found that her incident had caused a sensation all over the country. As she scrolled, she seemed to see a shadow in front of her. Shun Manting looked up and saw Shun Luo, who she didn't know when he had arrived. Shun Manting was caught off guard and was shocked. She shrank back a little. Shun Luo didn't avoid her at all. Instead, he took a step forward and looked at Shun Manting with a sneer. Do you think you're very smart? Shun Manting shrank back. Seeing his expression, she subconsciously thought of the time when he locked her in the room and did that to her a few days ago. Her heartbeat quickened. She looked at him with some fear and shouted, "What do you want to do?" Such a shout made Shun Luo laugh. He stepped forward and said, "You're warning me? Or threaten me? Do you think it will work?" "No, and it may even irritate Shun Luo." Shun Manting looked at him with her eyes full of hatred and uncontrollable fear. Faced with such a dangerous and tough attitude, Shun Manting unconsciously shrank to the corner of the bed. Looking back, she found that there was no retreat. Shun Manting looked up and gritted her teeth. She whispered, "Bastard, I am your sister." Shun Luo chuckled. "Sister? Do you still think of me as a big brother? Have you ever seen a big brother who would have that kind of interest in a sister? Huh?" Although it wasn't the first time Lily had learned of the abnormal feelings between them, when she heard those words, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. Brother and sister. This kind of taboo relationship, even if they were not related by blood, was still difficult to accept. How perverted. However, would there be any crucial information in their conversation? The whole world said that Shun Manting committed suicide because Ming ran away from the wedding. But according to Lily's impression of Shun Manting, this possibility was very small. Lily frowned, opened a recording software, and pressed the start button. Shun Manting's voice could be heard from the other end of the phone. She yelled, "That's because you're a pervert." No. Shun Luo took a step closer as he spoke. Shun Manting's face tensed up when she saw this. Shun Luo continued, "You just haven't experienced the fun of it. It's like a cat catching a mouse. The mouse is afraid of death, so it's afraid of being caught by the cat. But when the cat doesn't want to catch the mouse anymore, you, the mouse, will definitely be disappointed." How could he bear to let her be disappointed? There was obvious disgust in Shun Manting's eyes. With a disgusted expression, she said, "Don't take your own ideas and put them in someone else's shoes. When a cat chases a mouse, it only kills and eats it. I'd rather you kill me. TSK, why are you pretending to be a chaste woman? In reality, isn't it just to escape from me? Anyone can do it?" Shun Luo took a step closer and said slowly, "I'm not as good as Ming. That person is still unwilling to touch you. And in the end, it was me who took advantage of him. Your first time is still mine." Chapter 1059. The sound came out clearly. Yu leaned against the wall and listened to the sound inside. She covered her mouth in disbelief. She knew that Shun Luo's feelings for Shun Manting were unusual, but she never thought that they were in such a relationship. Shun Luo, unlike Shun Manting, your first time is still mine. What does that mean? Did Shun Manting and Shun Luo already know? It's impossible. Shun Luo is not that kind of person. How could he do that kind of thing? They had been married for more than half a year, and Shen Luo, and has never touched me. How could he touch another woman? No way, no way. Yi Yu's heart was beating fast, but at the same time, her mind was in a mess. She pricked up her ears and listened to the sound inside. Her back was tightly pressed against the wall, and she did not dare to move. Shen Luo and heard Shin Manting's roar and gently laughed. He said meaningfully, "I'm here. You don't have to be so loud." Shin Manting's breathing became more rapid. She looked at Shen Luo, and in front of her, as if she was looking at a madman. "I want to sue you. You didn't take any safety measures that day. It's only been 2 days." Shen Luo laughed and approached her slightly. He whispered, "Why bother? If you want it, I can give it to you at any time." As he spoke, he reached out to touch the button of his shirt. Shin Manting was even more shocked. She desperately shrank back and shouted, "You pervert beast! You will be punished by heaven! You will be punished by heaven!" Shin Manting's eyes were red. She stared at Shen Luo and shouted angrily, "If I let Grandma know, do you think Grandma will let you go? Let Grandma know? What are you going to tell Grandma? That I, Shen Luo, raped you?" Shen Luo's voice was as gentle as jade. His voice was pleasant to the ear, but it was filled with extreme cruelty. He stared at Shin Manting and said sarcastically, "What if I explained to Grandma that you were the one who seduced me?" When Yi Yu heard this, her legs went soft and she collapsed. Raped me? It turned out that Shen Luo raped Shin Manting? But why? Wasn't she his sister? Yi Yu recalled how attentive Shen Luo had been to Shin Manting over the past few days. Shen Luo had never been so attentive even when he was with his parents. It turned out that it was because Shen Luo liked Shin Manting. It wasn't because of sibling love. The moment Yi Yu fell, her cell phone rang at the same time. The classic, cheerful ringtone was very iconic. Yi Yu turned pale with fright. She quickly turned off the sound on her phone, got up from the ground, and ran. In the ward, both Shen Luo and Shin Manting were shocked at the same time. Shen Luo turned his head abruptly, and a sharp light flashed across his gentle eyes. He strode out and pushed the door open. At a glance, he saw Yi Yu's retreating back. When Shen Luo saw her, he had a bad feeling and shouted, "Yi Yu, stop!" When Yi Yu heard the shout, her footsteps quickened. Tears, like a faucet, flowed down endlessly. So disgusting. Chapter 1060. Yi Yu clearly heard the footsteps of Shen Luo running up from behind, very fast and very urgent. However, Yi Yu didn't want to stop at this moment. She didn't want to be seen by him, and she didn't want to be caught by him. Why? This Shen Luo was completely different from the Shen Luo in her memory. As she ran all the way, scenes flashed in Yi Yu's mind. Shen Luo smiled, gentle, and the words he said at the beginning, "If I am not married when I am 28 years old, I will marry you." Shen Luo's warm and low voice seemed to be ringing in her ears. When Shen Luo said these words with a smile, his eyes were full of tenderness for her. It was a promise. It was a promise. But why? Now everything is different. She finally married him as she wished, but her heart was getting more and more empty and more anxious. All the time, she had been wondering if she didn't do a good job and what did not satisfy him enough. All the time, Yi Yu had been reflecting on herself and also wondered if Shen Luo didn't love her. However, Yi Yu would never think that Shen Luo had fallen in love with another person, and this person was so close to them. So disgusting. Yi Yu ran all the way, and she didn't hide her crying. Many people looked over, and Shen Luo caught up from behind, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. It was a long black Bentley with a somewhat retro style. It looked grand, unique, and eye-catching. The most eye-catching was the license plate number, Kong 888888. It was very eye-catching, and almost everyone's eyes were on it as soon as it stopped at the entrance of the hospital. Yi Yu also saw this car, and at a glance, she recognized whose car it was. Yi Yu quickly ran forward and knocked on the driver's seat window. Soon, the window was rolled down. A wheat-skinned face turned over. He was angular, red lips, and white teeth. He wore a big black sunglasses on his face and wore a military green coat. Seeing Yi Yu's tears, Li Jinan took off the sunglasses. He frowned, and there was obvious displeasure in his phoenix eyes. He looked at Yi Yu and asked, "What's wrong?" Yi Yu sniffed, shook her head, and said, "GM Li, can you give me a ride?" As she spoke, she looked behind her. Shen Luo, and had almost caught up to her. She didn't know how to face him. Before she heard those things, she was his wife. However, after hearing the conversation between him and Shen Manting, Yu only had one thought in her mind. Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. Li Jinan followed her line of sight and saw Shen Luo and running over. Did they quarrel? Li Jinan raised an eyebrow and said, "Get in the car." "Thank you." Yu quickly ran to the front passenger seat and opened the door. Seeing this scene, Shen Luo was furious and roared, "Yu, you dare to go up and try." When Yu heard that, her body stiffened. She turned to look at Shen Luo, and a strange feeling washed over her like a surging tide. Without hesitation, she got into the car. As she slammed the door shut, he started the engine. Yu was caught off guard. Her body swayed, and she cried out in surprise. Chapter 10:61. Those three words were clearly ringing in her ears, but when they entered Yi Yu's ears, they seemed to have come from a very, very distant place. They were ethereal and unreal, and Yi Yu's mind went blank. Perhaps it was because of this voice, or because of Li Jinan's completely strange embrace. Yi Yu completely forgot how to react for a moment. Li Jinan clearly noticed Yi Yu's stiffness. He held the steering wheel with one hand, looked ahead, and turned to look at Yi Yu beside him. There was a very strange feeling in his heart. But soon, he gently pushed her away and said, "Seat belt." After being pushed away, Yi Yu didn't know when the tears that were still flowing from her eyes had stopped. His face suddenly became boiling hot. Yi Yu didn't have to look to know that her face must be frighteningly red. Yi Yu didn't even dare to raise her head. She pulled the seat belt next to her, fastened it, and sat in the car obediently. Li Jinan glanced through the rearview mirror and saw that Shen Luo couldn't catch up at all, so he slowed down the car. Looking at Yi Yu, Li Jinan took a few tissues and handed them to her. He asked, "Did you quarrel?" Yi Yu lowered her head and took it. She shook her head gently and said, "No, I can't quarrel with him. So now you're running away from home?" Li Jinan's voice was somewhat ambiguous. Yi Yu didn't know if it was an illusion, but Li Jinan's voice seemed to be a little happy. He said, "If I remember correctly, that person should be your husband, right?" "Yes." "Why did you quarrel?" Yi Yu didn't answer, but looked up at Li Jinan through the rearview mirror. Her eyes were full of curiosity and doubt. Li Jinan's phoenix eyes looked calm, as if what he just asked was just a casual question. However, Yi Yu didn't want to answer, so she lowered her head and didn't speak. For a time, the air was filled with indescribable silence and strangeness. Li Jinan simply changed the topic and asked, "Where to?" "I'll take you there. You can drop me off on the side of the road." "Thank you, President Li." Yi Yu tilted her head and looked out the window. "I still have a lot of things to settle and work to do. I won't trouble you." His voice was distant and polite to the point that it chilled one's heart. Li Jinan looked down at his wristwatch and said, "It's time for dinner. You haven't had dinner yet, right? Why don't we eat together?" "GM Li, I still have work to do. I'm a little busy, so I won't be joining you for lunch today. Why don't we eat another day?" Yi Yu wasn't in the mood. Furthermore, the relationship between her and Li Jinan was awkward. What happened that night, although no one mentioned it first, was the first thing that happened. However, the loss of her first time that day was like a thorn in her heart, making her feel very uncomfortable. When Li Jinan heard that, he asked casually, "What job?" Kingstown TV's variety show is about to start. This show's ratings are pretty good. It wasn't easy for me to get it. I can't be late. "Oh, I see." Li Jinan raised his eyebrows slightly. It was recorded at this time. As he spoke, he turned the car around and headed in the opposite direction. Yi Yu was stunned. Only then did she realize that the meal was just a pretense. He was trying to find out where she worked. Chapter 1062. Yu turned her head and looked at Li Jin strangely. Then, she didn't speak again. It was rush hour. She might not be able to get a taxi if she went out. She looked at the time. It would probably take a while to get there from here. Forget it. Forget it. Yu kept turning her head to look out of the window and didn't dare to look back. Seeing that the surrounding buildings were getting more and more familiar, Yu turned her head and said when she saw the TV station, "President Li, thank you. We are here. You can drop me off here." "Okay," Li Jin responded, but he didn't stop the car. Instead, he drove to the gate of the TV station. Yu was shocked and immediately knew what he wanted to do. She shouted, "GM Li, you could just drop me here. If you stop at the entrance of a television station, there will definitely be some gossip." Li Yu was shocked. "Do you know how stars become famous?" Li Jin didn't care. He glanced at her and chuckled. Yu was even more shocked. Does Li Jin want to use this to create hype? Of course, some hype is one of the important factors for stars to become famous. But with Li Jin, absolutely not. Yu's heart was beating very fast. She shouted, "President Li, I am married. If my husband's family sees any bad news about me, I am afraid." But before she finished speaking, the speed of the Bentley slowly slowed down. Li Jin stopped the car and said, "Go." It was not far from the TV station, but it was also a blind spot from the gate. Yu's words were all choked in her throat. The air was filled with unspeakable awkwardness. It turned out that I was being unrequited. Yu blushed, but then she didn't want to stay for long. After unbuckling the seatbelt, she grabbed her bag and ran away. Li Jin watched her flee in a flustered manner, and the corners of his lips curled up subconsciously. He started the car and turned around to go back. Yu looked at the eye-catching Bentley. All the heat on her face didn't ease, but intensified. Damn it. If this happened a few more times, I'm afraid I won't be able to live. Yu wasn't a superstar. She wasn't even a B-list or B-list celebrity. As soon as she walked in, the makeup artist, who had already made an appointment with her, snapped when she saw her and shouted, "What the hell are you doing? If it weren't for Mira, I wouldn't be helping a small celebrity like you with makeup. Just when you were thinking how great you were, do you know what time it is? You're a whole 5 minutes late." Hearing that, Yu's face turned redder. In the face of such an angry scolding, she wanted to refute, but she quickly lowered her head and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, Ms. Ada. I'm late. There won't be a next time." Ada's anger subsided when she saw Yu's attitude. She warned, "Be more careful next time. Go wash your face." "Yes." Yu lowered her head and went inside. After washing her face, she came out again. Although they were a few minutes late, the recording was still considered a success. After all, she was an important guest, so even if she was late, no one would notice. In such a program, all Yu did was show her face and make her presence known. Chapter 1063. Shenluo had called her many times. When she was about to call him back, she heard someone shouting, "Wow, that's so shocking. The woman who committed suicide yesterday is having sex with her brother." Shenluo said, "Wow, that's amazing. The woman who committed suicide yesterday is having sex with her brother." Hearing this, Yu was shocked. Xiao Qin's originally calm heart was like a small lake that was surging uncontrollably when he heard these words. It was as if the calm lake at the bottom of his heart had surged with great waves. She turned her head suddenly and asked, "Who is the woman you were talking about?" Yu's reaction was very big. Seeing her reaction, the two backstage staff looked at each other and said, "Who else can it be? Isn't it the Shen Manting who committed suicide these days? Oh my God, it's an amazing reversal. Didn't they say that she committed suicide because On Ming ran away from the marriage? Now such a thing happened. It's a slap in the face." Such words made Yu's heart beat faster, and she asked, "How do you know?" "What the hell? I'm afraid the whole country knows it now." Suddenly, it was exposed anonymously on Weibo, and it's a recording. Recording? Yu lowered her head and unlocked the phone. Sure enough, when she opened it, she saw the crazy news on Weibo. After she opened it, it was all about Shun Manting, Shun Luoan, and Ming. Slap in the face? Mysterious man reveals the truth about Shun's daughter's suicide. Amazing reversal. The woman who committed suicide in love had sex with her married brother. The evidence is conclusive. The recording of Shin brother and sister having sex is exposed on the internet. The brother raped the sister? When Yu saw the series of messages, she felt as if she were in a dream. She had just heard such news in the afternoon, and less than 3 hours later, the internet had been turned upside down. Yu just opened the news, and before she read it carefully, she received a call from Shun Luoan. Seeing this call, Yu had mixed feelings. After picking up the phone, before Yu had time to speak, she heard Shin Luoan's angry voice coming from the other side. Yu. Yu was shocked by his angry roar, and only heard him continue to say, "You are very good, very good. Are you satisfied now? Now not only Shin Manting, but also I will be finished." Yu was stunned and asked, "Brother Luoan?" Before Yu could finish her sentence, Shin Luoan continued, "Come back. I want to have a good talk with you." Before Yu could make a sound, he had hung up the phone. Yu began to panic. His heart felt terribly empty. This matter was not simple. Shin Luoan had never been so angry before, and it was directed at her. Could it be that Shin Luoan thought that she was the culprit? At that thought, Yu's heart skipped a beat. She quickly picked up her phone and wanted to call Shin Luoan, but the line was busy. Without further ado, she picked up her handbag and ran out. He took a taxi and headed home. Yu scrolled through Weibo and saw a new Weibo post from an empty account. The title was eye-catching: "The Truth Behind the Shun Family's Precious Daughter's Suicide." It turned out that it was caused by her brother forcing himself on her. Chapter 1064. Yu clicked on the recording and heard Shin Luoan's voice. The content was exactly the same as the conversation she had overheard at the door in the afternoon. There was no difference in the voice or the content. The only difference was the size and clarity. Some parts of the conversation that Yu hadn't heard very clearly were played clearly in the recording. Without a doubt, it must have been recorded from a very close distance. But it wasn't her. Could it be Shin Manting? But what good would it do for Shin Manting to release the recording and its content at such a time? Nothing. Nothing at all. Yu couldn't find a reason for Shun Manting to release the recording, but if it was Yu, it would make sense. A person would frame another person for no other reason than jealousy or hatred. So, Shin Luoan insisted that she was the one who played the recording, didn't he? Yu's heart sank to the bottom. When Lily released the recording, she was also hesitant. If such content was released, the consequences could be big or small. But for her, it was undoubtedly good. But wouldn't it hurt Yu? After all, Shin Luoan was her husband. Therefore, before Lily released the recording, she called Yi Qianqian to ask. After a moment of silence, Yi Qianqian said, "If it's really like what you said, there's no point in forcing Yu to be with Shin Luoan." With that, Lily knew what to do. She registered an account and located the IP address to Canada. Then, she began to release the recording. Sure enough, when the recording was released, it caused a sensation on the internet. She picked up her cell phone and dialed Ming's number. Ming seemed to be busy at the moment. It rang for a long time before he picked up the phone. He sounded a little tired. "Ming, I just did something big." Lily's voice was mysterious. Ming was silent for a moment before he asked, "That recording, did you release it?" "Yes." Lily lay on the bed with a smile on her face. "In this way, Shin Manting can't marry you, right? How did you get it?" "I installed a monitoring virus in her phone. When they were talking, I happened to hear them, so I recorded those words." When Ming heard that, he wasn't as happy as Lily had imagined. Instead, his expression became solemn. Lily didn't hear Ming speak, so she was a little confused and called out, "Ming, are you listening?" "Yes." There was no joy in Ming's voice. Instead, he sighed and said, "It's really Yu. Next time you do something like this, remember to tell me first." This time, you were too impulsive. Shen Manting was right. Without Shen Manting, there would still be Zhang Manting and Li Manting tomorrow. Oming's wife could be many Mantings, but she couldn't be Yu Lily. Yu Lily didn't understand what he meant and asked, "What's wrong?" "Things are not as simple as you think. Stay in Paris for the time being and don't come back. I'll pick you up after I've dealt with things here." Oming's voice carried a hint of coaxing, as if he was coaxing a child. Chapter 1065. Yu Lily's voice was like a layer of sweet and sticky honey, covering Oming's heart, making him feel indescribably satisfied. Unconsciously, Oming curled his lips and responded softly. He said slowly, "I miss you too. It won't be long. When I'm done here, I'll officially bring you back." At that time, he would officially give her an identity. But now was not the time. Yu Lily understood Ming's dilemma, nodded and asked, "Are you busy?" "Well, a little bit." "Then you go ahead. I'll call you later." "Okay, go to bed early." "Good night." "Good night." After saying goodbye, Ming felt warm in his heart. But when he turned his head, he saw Qiao Ziqing at a glance. Qiao Ziqing didn't know how long she had been standing behind him, looking at Ming with disappointment in her eyes. Ming felt bad in his heart. When he was about to speak, he heard Qiao Ziqing say, "Oh, what kind of woman are you looking for? Not only is she not educated, but she also has no brains." "The Shun family has been friends with our family for many years. Now the Shun family has become like this, and it can't be separated from your mistress." "Oh, what do you want me to say about you?" "Mom, it's not what you think. In fact, I heard it all, and you still want to lie to me." Qiao Ziqing shouted and looked disappointed. She stared at her son and roared, "I won't allow you to be with such a woman. Such a woman has tarnished the threshold of our family. Break up with me immediately, and don't contact her in the future." Qiao Ziqing's words were full of anger. When Ming heard that, his face, which was originally quite good, suddenly darkened. Looking at his mother's serious and angry expression, he said, "Mom, Yu Lily is not the kind of person you think she is. She is an orphan, but she is much better than Shun Manting, a two-faced, selfish woman." "Shut up." Qiao Ziqing was even more furious and roared, "I think you are bewitched by that woman. What kind of magic potion did she give you? That kind of woman, for the sake of money, she would do anything in front of you. Do you think I don't know?" Ming was also angry and said in a low voice, "Mom, she's not that kind of person. If she did it for money, she wouldn't have broken up with me in the first place. If she was that kind of woman, do you think she would still be with Shen Manting?" Qiao Ziqing's breathing became more rapid, her chest heaving up and down as she shouted, "Crazy, you're really crazy. Ming, I thought that when you grew up, your thinking would be more mature. How could you still be so naive? These are all tricks. That kind of woman is best at playing these kinds of tricks. Do you think I don't know? Do you think I haven't met her before? When your father was young, it was common for him to meet this kind of woman. If it wasn't for my high vigilance, do you think there would be a place for us in this house? Mom, she's different from the other women you've met. She's not the kind of woman you're talking about. I'm in my 30s, so I can still differentiate. You don't have to worry about me. I hope I can make my own decisions about my marriage." Ming's voice was tinged with anger, but his tone was extremely calm and determined. Chapter 1066. Ming turned pale with fright and rushed forward to support Qiao Ziqing. Qiao Ziqing covered her waist with one hand and held Ming tightly with the other. She shouted, "Ming, listen to me. Break up with that woman, okay? I'm begging you as your mother, okay?" As he spoke, he choked with sobs and cried out in pain. "You're bewitched by that woman now, but in the future, you'll feel that what I did was right. That kind of woman has no redeeming qualities at all." "Don't talk." Ming looked flustered. He quickly helped Qiao Ziqing up and said, "I'll take you back to take your medicine. Don't talk and don't move." Qiao Ziqing's hands clutched Ming's sleeves tightly. Her well-maintained figure seemed a little crooked at this moment. She shouted, "Promise me first that you will break up with that woman. Don't talk." Ming was angry with her. He simply picked her up and asked, "Where did you put the medicine?" I don't want to take medicine. You're my only son, and even my only son doesn't listen to me. I, uh, Before she could finish her sentence, Qiao Ziqing groaned in pain and said, I might as well just die. Oming was so angry that he almost cursed. He strode into her room and gently placed her on the bed. He turned around and searched the room. He asked, Where did you put the medicine? I don't know. Qiao Ziqing was in so much pain that her body was convulsing, but her voice was still full of energy. She shouted, If you don't listen to me, I'll die in front of you. Oming pursed his lips and stopped flipping through the book. He stood up and walked out. Qiao Ziqing saw this and was even more confused. Then tears fell down and she shouted, You damn heartless man. Do you really want your mother to die rather than break up with that woman? Why did I give birth to you? Her voice became softer and softer. Qiao Ziqing hugged her body and curled up. She softly moaned in pain and whispered, Where did Lao go? I'm going to die. Your son wants me to die. However, before Qiao Ziqing could finish her sentence, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. Oming held a white bottle of medicine in his hand. After opening the package, he fed it to Qiao Ziqing. Qiao Ziqing ate it in a daze and fell asleep on the bed. It was obviously a cold day, but Oming was so scared that he was sweating. He touched his face and checked her breathing. When he found that she was getting calmer, he breathed a sigh of relief. After letting his mother lie down and tucking her in, he straightened up and looked at Qiao Ziqing helplessly. The young ones were hard to deal with, and the old ones were also hard to deal with. Why were all the women around him so restless? Oming sighed. He turned around and went back to his room to hide the spare medicine. She actually used her illness to threaten me to break up with you, Lily. It seems that I have to speed up the implementation of my plan. You, Lily, was always paying attention to the developments on Weibo. In just 4 hours, the first Weibo post had more than 100,000 likes and tens of thousands of comments. However, just as she was engrossed in reading the comments, the internet speed jumped and the page changed to 404. Chapter 1067. She was the one who posted it. She hadn't deleted it, so it had to be deleted by the authorities. But isn't it too late to delete the post now? Lily clicked on the top search on Weibo and looked around. Almost all of it had been deleted. Tisk, it's a blatant lie. But Lily wasn't stupid enough to log into that account at this time. That account had probably been targeted long ago. If she logged in, the moment she logged in, she could be targeted by hackers. With Lily's current skills, she wasn't 100% sure that she wouldn't be tracked. She searched for the account name, and sure enough, it had been 404. Ha. But immediately, Lily felt that something was wrong. All the major marketing accounts began to publish new content about a certain celebrity taking drugs. In a flash, the celebrity's name was all over the screen. In a flash, it was pushed to the top search. The change was so fast that Lily was caught off guard. Changing the topic? Changing the target? The topic came too fast. Without a doubt, it must be Shen Luo's doing. Lily looked around and found that the incident between Shen Luo and Shun Manting had been completely replaced. Now, most people's attention had been shifted to the celebrity taking drugs. That's something. But those who should have seen it must have seen it, and those who should have heard it must have heard it all. Moreover, Lily had a backup. It would come in handy sooner or later. Yu had a small apartment in Kingstown. Usually, she lived alone. This time, because Shin Manting was holding her wedding in Kingstown, it was temporarily used as a temporary residence for her family. For example, Shun Luo and Shin Manting and the servant Nanny Zhang. At this time, Nanny Zhang should be taking care of Shin Manting in the hospital. So, only Shin Luo was there. If it had been any other time, Yu would have been very happy to hear the news. But today, there was an indescribable sense of heaviness. When Yu returned home, it was already past 10 p.m., very late. With an uneasy heart, Yu took out the key and opened the door. The living room was very dark without the light on. Yu's eyes had good night vision. Even in a very dark place, she could see clearly. Just as he was about to reach for the lamp, a figure suddenly stood up from the sofa in front of him. Yi Yu was shocked and took a step back. At the same time, she pressed the button on the light and shouted, "Who is it?" The lights came on. With a glance, Yi Yu saw the figure inside. It was a man wearing a bright green sweater. His body was tall and straight, but his face was very gloomy. Shen Luo and walked toward Yi Yu. Step by step, his footsteps were steady and slow. When she saw that it was Shen Luo, and she didn't feel relieved. Instead, she felt an indescribable sense of heaviness and nervousness. "Luo, brother Luo," and Yi Yu shouted and looked at him. "Why don't you turn on the light?" However, Shen Luo and didn't answer her. Instead, he approached her with a sullen face and said, "Hand over the recording." When Yi Yu heard that, she immediately said, "I didn't. Do you dare to say that you weren't eavesdropping on our conversation outside this afternoon?" Shen Luo sneered and approached her. "Yi Yu, do you think I'm a fool?" Chapter 1068. Yi Yu looked at Shen Luo's obviously unkind face and stepped back. However, Shen Luo's face showed obvious disbelief. He looked at Yi Yu coldly, approached her step by step, and said, "At that time, there was only me and Shenmanting. Who else but you?" When Yi Yu heard this, she felt suffocated. She looked at Shen Luo and shook her head repeatedly. "Why don't you believe me? I didn't have to do this at all, did I? We have known each other for almost 20 years. Shen Luo, and am I such a person in your eyes? No." However, in addition to him and Shen Manting, there was only Yi Yu. No matter what, Shen Manting couldn't joke about such a thing, so it could only be Yi Yu. I could not be her. Shen Luo stared at Yi Yu and sneered. "I don't understand what you are thinking. Yi Yu, you have been wrong during the time you married me, haven't you?" There was sarcasm in Shen Luo's words, and a pair of serious eyes stared at Yi Yu in front of him. When Yi Yu saw Shen Luo's expression, she knew that this man was angry. Her back hit the cold wall behind her. Yi Yu looked at Shen Luo, who was walking in front of her step by step, and frowned tightly. "That's why you released this recording in an attempt to destroy me. Am I right?" Shen Luo's face became more and more ugly, and his tone was also more and more determined. "You are a smart person. You know very well what the consequences will be after this recording is released. At that time, Shen Manting doesn't need you to do anything at all. Grandma will drive her out personally." "That's amazing." "It wasn't me." Yi Yu's face was pale, and she shouted, "Shen Luo, that's enough. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't even turn on the recording software on my mobile phone. And how could I know what you would say? If I released this recording in Shen Manting's current situation, would I still be a human? She's also my good friend and your sister. How could I do such a thing?" If Yi Yu was now on the opposing side of Shen Luo and Shen Manting, she would have released the recording knowing that it was enough to destroy Shen Luo and Shen Manting. That would have been Shen Manting's own doing. Who asked Yi Yu to be caught red-handed? That wasn't the case at all. Yi Yu had a pretty good relationship with Shen Manting. Although she had accidentally heard such a secret that day, and she had even considered divorcing Shen Manting, she had no intention of harming Shen Manting. Now that Shen Luo had interrogated her in such a manner, Yi Yu's heart turned cold. She had loved this man for more than 10 years. If he had ever loved her, he would never have said such words to her. Being able to be so aggressive only proved that this man did not love her at all. When he heard Yi Yu's explanation, he sneered, "Are you sure? Yi Yu, did you think I didn't know? When your parents divorced, you fought with your sister to follow your mother. Wasn't it because your mother's mistress was rich? Fortunately, your sister gave in. Otherwise, do you think you would still be the daughter of a rich family today? Poor sister. She didn't even know that she had been sold by you." Chapter 1069. Seeing Yi Yu's reaction, Shen Luo looked at her coldly and said, "Do you want to know how I know it?" "I didn't." Yi Yu shouted, "Who doesn't want to be with their mother? I wanted to be with my mother, and so did my sister, but I was only 5 years old at that time. How could I know so many twists and turns? Shen Luo, and don't judge others by your own standards. I'm not as disgusting as you. Shen Luo and sneered. You've been disgusting for so many years. Don't you think it's too hypocritical to say this now? You know how to make yourself more beautiful and likable since you were a child. Grandma was right. A woman like you is full of bad intentions since you were a child. You are destined to have no fate with our Shen family. No wonder my grandma hates you so much. Hearing this, Yi Yu's heart beat faster, and her heart was cold. She looked at Shen Luo and in front of her and said, Do you want a divorce? Divorce? Shen Luo laughed. I'm crazy. If I divorce at this time, I'm really finished. While speaking, he stopped. Shen Luo was not as tall as Li Jinan. He was about 1.8 meters tall, which was almost the same height as Yi Yu, who was wearing high heels. They looked at each other, and Shen Luo continued, Or do you want me to lose my reputation? To get back at me? Yi Yu was shocked. Looking at him, she didn't know what to say for a moment. Is this what Shen Luo thinks of me? How is it possible, Shen Luo? I'll get back at anyone but you. Don't say it, Shen Luo interrupted her and said, In this case, you'd better not intervene in the next thing. If I find out, I don't know what I'll do. After that, Shen Luo directly bypassed her, opened the door, and went straight out. The door was slammed shut. Yi Yu was frozen in place and couldn't recover for a long time. In her heart, the things that she had been obsessed with seemed to collapse at this moment. Heavily, she made a clear and desperate sound. He didn't believe her, even if only a little. Is this still the old Shen Luo? The boy who used to look at her with a gentle smile? The boy who once ran in the mountains with a high fever on his back? And the boy who was almost eaten by wolves in order to save her from the mountains? Where was he? There was nothing left. With the passage of time, the youth in the past had gradually disappeared without a trace. Was this man and Shen Luo still worthy of her persistent love? That was the first time Yi Yu had thought about it. He was at a loss and at a loss. Her cell phone rang anxiously. Yi Yu took it out of her bag and answered it. It was Mila. Mira was not only her good friend, but also the best agent under NC Company. She picked up the phone and heard Myra's anxious voice. She shouted, Yu, the fact that you're married has been exposed. Now everyone knows that you're Shen Luo's wife. You better not go out for the next few days if there's nothing important. I'm afraid you'll be surrounded by the paparazzi. How could that be? Very few people know about this. I don't know. Anyway, be careful. I'll ask an assistant to help you. Got it. Thank you, Mila. Chapter 1070. Mira. Yi Yu interrupted Myra's words and said, If I use this to hype up, will it have any impact? Mira was stunned. She thought it would take a lot of effort to persuade her to use this to hype up. She didn't expect Yi Yu to ask first. After thinking for a while, Mira said, If you decide to use this to hype up, leave it to me. If it were any other artist, I would definitely start to hype up without hesitation. But you are my friend, and I don't want you to blame me in the future. Yu, if you really want to use this to hype up, I am confident that I can make you famous. As for whether you can make it to the A-list or not, it depends on how hard you work. Like many girls, Yu had dreamed of being a big star since she was a child. Hearing Myra's words, it was impossible for Yu to say that she wasn't tempted. Everyone wanted to be successful and reach the peak of life. People who had this kind of goal were always men and women, young and old. Yu was silent for a moment and asked, What is the risk? Now that the crisis has been created, even if the outside world knows the fact that you have a secret marriage with the young master of the Shun family, it is not impossible to cover up this matter. But if you want to make use of this matter, you have to make it big. So, will it bring harm to the Shun family? The harm to the Shun family is not caused by you, but by themselves. What you do is just to help them. But if it succeeds, will your husband blame you? Blame? Yu twitched her lips and said, Then let's start, Mira. I'm ready. Mira felt a little strange and reminded her, If there's a crack in your marriage because of this, will it be okay? Even if I don't hype up, there will still be cracks in our marriage. Yu smiled and looked into the mirror from afar. Suddenly, she felt a little sad. I'll leave it to you, Mira. Tell me what to do. All right. I'll contact you again if I need your cooperation. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Yu sat on the sofa and browsed the news. The major websites have been replaced with news of a famous male star taking drugs, but there were also netizens who questioned and posted, "Is this to save Ishin siblings? Hands up, this PR is awesome." After scrolling a bit more, she realized that there were already a lot of news about her on the trending page. Breaking news: Shun Luo and's wife's identity has been revealed. She's from the entertainment industry. She's the new and powerful actress, Yi Yu. Yi Yu clicked on it. Was the newly minted actress referring to her? Although it wasn't positive news, he still felt a little happy when he saw these words. He clicked on it and found that the comments were mixed. Pingsheng Ida Li. What do you mean by a new and powerful actress? Come on, any random unknown actress is a new and powerful actress. How can you call me Goddess Jean? My Goddess Jean Jean Fan double-clicking 666 send you to the heavens. I have an impression of this woman. She's already married? He had a child's face. Damn, Bian Shun Shuang is so shameless. I'll send you to heaven. I pity this star. It wasn't easy for her to find a rich second-generation heir. So this is how he behaves. Doghead, super cute little piggy. My sister, you're amazing. You're being treated as a mistress by your own sister-in-law. This woman must be lacking in charm. After scrolling through the list, her phone vibrated. She had received a WeChat message. Chapter 1071. When Yu saw the message, she immediately asked, "What should I send?" Mira, it can highlight your position as the underdog and make you seem helpless, but it can't be weak. It can't make people think that you're pretending to be weak. Think about it carefully. When she saw the message, Yu thought for a moment. Then, she typed 3 words to Mira. "I believe him." When Mira saw the words, she was slightly stunned. She immediately sent a thumbs up. "Sure." When Yu saw Mira's reply, she sat on the sofa and took a selfie. Then, she sent out the message she had prepared. After she sent it, no one responded for a few minutes. After all, she was a minor celebrity. It was normal for no one to notice her. Yu didn't care too much. She put her phone down and went to take a shower. After removing her makeup and applying a facial mask, she picked up her phone and realized that the message had exploded. Sister Fan is the best. F***CK. He still believes in such conclusive evidence. True love. Yunsha Ijirua. Girl, although I don't know you, I sympathize with you. It's better to get a divorce with such a man. Heart. Bao Jia's little lowly. I've seen the military adventure you acted in. Although you're not very popular yet, I can tell that you're a very hard-working newcomer. Keep it up. Heart. Shuang Shun Kuangdia. You still believe in him? Are you retarded? Because of this message, Yu's number of fans increased from the original tens of thousands. There were a lot of messages popping up. It was the first time that Yu had experienced such an obvious change in her fans. Do you know how celebrities become famous? It's 30% ability, 30% luck, and the rest is all hype. That was what Mira had said. Make use of the hype. When Eulili arrived at the Kingstown airport, it was December 29th, the day before New Year's Eve. Eulili had wrapped herself up tightly to avoid being photographed. Her original plan of not returning to the country had been completely ruined by Ming. The first thing Eulili did when she returned to the country was to put her luggage at home before calling Ming. Recently, Ming had been extremely busy. The end of the year was approaching, and there were a lot of urgent matters to deal with in the company. There was also his mother's matter, the Shun family's matter, and the wedding. All kinds of things piled up. When he received Eulili's call, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he had just eaten. Ming, Eulili asked. Ming took a sip of the soup and replied, "Yes. I'm back home." Ming choked on his soup and coughed violently. He hurriedly pulled out a piece of tissue and wiped it. At this time? Yeah. Eulili heard his surprise and said, "I'm alone at home now." Yi Qianqian went home for the new year. No one followed you, right? Ming put down his chopsticks worriedly. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? I was afraid that you wouldn't let me come back. I missed you. Lily's voice was cautious. After I got off the plane, I wrapped myself up tightly. No one would recognize me. I'll be fine. Ming's temper melted when he heard her say, I missed you. His expression softened as he said in a low voice, wait for me. I'll go look for you now. Chapter 1072. Su Cheng was sitting next to Ming eating. After watching Ming hang up the phone, he coughed and asked, is that Miss you? Yeah. Ming answered and stood up. After explaining the company's affairs, he stood up and said, if anyone looks for me, tell them that I am busy and have been in the company. In this kind of situation, Ming did not dare to provoke the reporters easily. If they were groundless, who knew what they would write? Su Cheng knew the danger and nodded, but he still reminded him, why don't you eat first? I'm not eating. You eat. Ming went into the office cloakroom and put on sunglasses. After changing into a low-key black windbreaker, he went downstairs. Driving a more common car, he stealthily drove to the neighborhood where Lily lived. As soon as he went up, Ming rang the doorbell, and the person inside immediately opened the door. Ming was dressed very differently from his usual style, but Lily recognized him at a glance. With a happy smile on her face, she rushed toward him. Her whole body climbed on top of him, and her legs clung to his thighs. Ming held her firmly, and the smile on his face gradually widened. After carrying her in, he closed the door and couldn't wait to kiss her face. Lily took off his sunglasses, hugged his neck with both hands, and kissed him back. Ming sat on the sofa with her in his arms, pinched her face, and frowned. Why have you lost weight again? Haven't you eaten these days? I'm not used to French food. Lily smiled and sat on him, looking at his tired face. On his originally wheat-colored skin, there were 2 more dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that even his chin had turned green. His hair had grown long, and his cheeks were slightly sunken. Lily felt a little distressed. She touched his face and asked, have you been very tired recently? The heartache in her eyes made Ming smile. He held her face and kissed her on the lips. I'm not tired, he said. Liar. Look at your face. Lily pinched his face and said, you look like a person in his 30s. You look old again. Ming laughed. I'm already in my 30s. No, you look about the same age as Shun Julia. That's because he grew too fast. Ming looked at her seriously. That's why he looks old. I'm different. No matter what, I'm still young. Otherwise, how could I have charmed you for so many years? Yuli snorted in disgust and looked away. What kind of expression is that? Ming hugged her and chuckled helplessly. Am I wrong? You've grown thicker. It's only been a few days since we last met, and your facial defense has become so strong. Lily pushed him away. I'm hungry. Have you eaten? I didn't eat. That's great. Let's eat instant noodles together. There's only instant noodles here. Okay. Ming chuckled and looked at her. Everything you cook is delicious. Lily raised her eyebrows slightly with a proud look on her face and immediately went into the kitchen. About 10 minutes later, Lily walked out with a bowl of noodles and shouted, time to eat. However, what responded to her was a steady and even breathing. Asleep? Chapter 1073. A part of Lily's heart was suddenly squeezed hard, and it was sore and painful. Putting the noodles down, Lily went to the room and took out a blanket. She gently covered him. Ming had always been a light sleeper. Lily's movements were very, very light, for fear of waking him up. After gently covering him with the blanket, Lily quietly took the instant noodles back to the kitchen. Then she put on her coat, hat, and scarf, and walked out the door. Ming hadn't had a good rest since he went to Japan. As soon as he returned to China, he was busy again. Even he didn't expect that he would accidentally fall asleep. When he woke up, he smelled the aroma of food. Ming lifted the blanket on his body and stretched. He could clearly hear a slight sound coming from the kitchen. The sound was very quiet, and he could tell that it was light movements. Ming walked into the kitchen quietly. Lily was cooking. She was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand. From behind, She had short hair and wore a beige scarf. Her figure was slender and graceful. Every part of her was so perfect that it made Ming's heart beat faster. Ming gently stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. Lily was caught off guard and was shocked. When she turned around, she saw Ming's smiling peach blossom eyes. His dark brown eyes were a little bit evil. He leaned over slightly, and his eyes were full of tenderness. He whispered, "Are you scared?" Lily relaxed and glared at him. "Why don't you make a sound when you walk?" Ming hugged her tighter and moved slightly closer. He stared at her face and whispered, "What delicious food are you making? See for yourself." "I can't see it." Ming's eyes never moved away. He looked at her and said, "When you are here, I only have eyes for you." Lily couldn't help but smile. She turned off the fire and said, "Go wash your hands. We can eat soon." Ming didn't listen. He leaned forward and easily captured her lips and gently sucked. Lily slightly narrowed her eyes in response, but she withdrew after a kiss and said, "Let's eat first." Ming reluctantly released her and kissed the corner of her lips again. "Okay." He washed his hands and sat down at the dining table. He took the rice that Lily handed him and quickly started eating. Lily had a small stomach, so she was half full after a few bites. She rested her chin on her hands and looked at Ming. Ming couldn't help but chuckle as he ate. He looked up at her and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Are you so fascinated by my handsomeness that you can't help yourself?" "Yeah." Lily laughed out loud, but the smile on her face quickly disappeared. She asked, "It's almost the new year. Aren't you done with your work? They should be on vacation at this time." "There's still a project in the company, and I'm almost done with it." Ming looked up and saw the distress on her face. He felt warm in his heart and said, "Thanks to your help, enchanting was dealt with directly. Otherwise, I would have been busy for a while." Lily blinked in surprise. "Really?" "Yeah. These few days, because of Shun Luo and enchanting's matter, the focus of the media has been shifted a lot. It's more convenient to do a lot of things. It's all thanks to you. It was just that the timing of the news wasn't right. Although the travel and reputation issue had been resolved, there was a new problem with Xiao Ziqing." Chapter 1074. Silly Girl. Ming laughed and said, "You did a good job." Hearing Ming's praise again, Lily felt a little flattered. She folded her hands on the table, looked at Ming with a pair of round eyes, and asked with a smile, "Then how will you reward me? What reward do you want?" The smile on Lily's face widened, and she said, "Can you promise me anything?" Ming saw the cunning smile on her face, and the smile between his eyebrows deepened. He nodded and said, "As long as I can do it, I promise you." As long as he could do it, he could give her anything. Even if he couldn't do it, he would try to do it. Lily heard that and smiled like a flower. "Well, you keep in mind. When I think of something, I will tell you." "Not now. Not now. Let's talk about it later." Lily stood up, walked to the refrigerator, and asked, "Do you want to drink milk?" Hearing the word milk, Ming turned his head and said with a smile, "Are you going to drub me again?" Lily felt a little guilty and turned her head away. She coughed and said, "Don't mention the past again. It happened a few days ago." Ming said, "Really? Why do I feel that it's been a long time?" Lily took out 2 bottles of milk, put one of them in front of Ming, and said, "Drink it. There is no drug this time. Feed me." Ming put down the chopsticks, took out a tissue, and wiped his mouth. "You feed me, and I will forgive you for drugging me last time. If I don't feed you, you won't forgive me." Lily didn't believe him. She bit the straw in her mouth and looked at him with a teasing look. "Forget it. It doesn't matter to me." Ming looked at her proud look, stood up, walked toward her, and said, "Then I will punish you." Lily held the milk bottle, drank it, and stepped back. She looked at him and asked with a smile, "What do you want to do?" "Don't run. Stand." Ming walked toward her and rushed toward her with his long arms and legs. "You have to pay the price for bullying men." When Lily saw the situation, she retreated with the milk bottle in her hand and shouted, "I didn't. You've always been the one bullying me." "You're still quibbling? Don't run." Ming ran after her. Lily exclaimed when she saw that. She ran into the room and locked the door from the inside. With a sigh of relief, Lily put down the milk bottle and shouted, "Mr. Big O, please wait outside. Open the door, little you. You will be punished even more severely." Ming's voice was filled with laughter. He gently knocked on the door a few times. "Open the door. You still want to punish me? I'm not going out." Lily snorted and walked around the room. She put back the things that she had put away one by one. Lily, open the door." Ming was still knocking on the door. After Lily put away her digital screen, she went out and opened the door. As soon as she opened the door, she saw Ming's tired face. However, his pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes were still as bright as a bright lamp. They were bright and full of expression, like honey, which made people unable to extricate themselves from them. When Lily saw him, all the dissatisfaction that had been accumulated in her heart disappeared. Chapter 1075. Lily was caught off guard. She struggled for a while, but soon she obeyed. Ming held her in his arms and moved his feet gently. Soon, he pushed her down on the bed that she had just made. The hot kiss gently moved from her lips, and Ming seemed a little impatient. With his arms around her waist, Ming looked at her with a pair of burning eyes and whispered, "How long have we not seen each other?" "For days." Lily gently put her hands on his waist and felt his eagerness and enthusiasm. She looked up at him with a smile. "It's 5 days." Ming gently kissed her lips. "It's 7 hours faster in China than in Paris, so it's 5 days. Can it be calculated like this?" Lily felt that this man was shameless. Looking at the eyes in front of her, she blinked. Ming moved a little closer, and his hot breath intertwined with hers. He whispered, "Then let's change the calculation. There are 24 hours in a day, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of sleep. We could be together for 8 hours a day. So, how many hours have I lost?" "That works. Why not?" Ming smiled. The distance between their lips was less than a millimeter, and they were almost touching. Lily's heart was beating fast. This kind of distance was more nerve-wracking than a direct kiss. "Once an hour. Tell me, how many times do you want to compensate me?" Lily's face was burning. She pushed him and growled, "Big pervert. If you love someone, you will do sexual things with her all the time. You told me this. Have you forgotten?" "I didn't." "Don't be shameless." "You said it." Ming held her hands and then lowered his head to kiss her lips. His movements were gentle, slow, and tender. His big palms moved gently down her body, easily penetrated her clothes around her waist, and touched her warm and smooth skin. Lily narrowed her eyes and gently hugged him. She responded intentionally or unintentionally. The winter in Kingstown was never particularly cold. Lily was wearing an unlined shirt and a loose sweater, which was easily taken off by Ming. Her snow-white upper body touched the cold air and shrank. Ming pressed his lips against hers, and his kisses fell on her body, gentle and devout. Lily couldn't help but lift his thigh. She climbed onto his leg and hugged his waist. She called out, "Ming, MMM." Ming directly sealed her lips. His big hands were unscrupulous, and his tongue pried open her lips and teeth, intertwining with each other. Just then, the phone in Ming's pocket began to vibrate. Ming paused and straightened up. His breathing was a little heavy. He picked up the phone and saw that it was his mother calling. He calmed down and waved the phone screen in front of Lily. "It's my mom. I'll take the call." "Yeah," Lily answered. She pulled the sweater that she had thrown aside and covered herself with it. "Mom, Lila, it's almost Lunar New Year. Come home quickly and let's have a meal together." "Mom, I'm still working. You and Dad can eat first." "You're still working? Where are you working?" "I'm at the company. Don't wait for me." Chapter 1076. When Ming heard that, his heart skipped a beat. Subconsciously, Ming glanced at Lily. Meeting her gaze, Ming remained calm and said, "I just came out. I'll go back later. I still have things to do." "Really?" "Really." Xiao Ziqing was skeptical and snorted. "You'd better not let me find out that you're still with that woman." Otherwise, don't come back for the new year. Just die with that woman outside. Su Cheng's heart twitched when he heard that. What she said was too much. You shouldn't casually curse people at any time, especially during the new year. In ancient times, it was considered a taboo for an elder to curse the younger generation. Su Cheng coughed and said, "Madam, isn't it too much to say that? After all, Master O is your son." Xiao Ziqing listened to the phone and looked at Su Cheng. She had already guessed something. With a sullen face, she said, "Do you know that he's with that woman?" "I don't know." Su Cheng lowered his head. "But I think it's not appropriate for you to curse your own son like that. Master O has been very busy recently. I hope you can forgive him." Xiao Ziqing knew that her son was busy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have brought him the desserts she had made herself. But as soon as he arrived at the company, he wasn't there. It was a very uncomfortable feeling, especially when she thought that her son might be with that coquettish B*TCH. She felt even more uncomfortable. Xiao Ziqing held the phone in her hand and said to Ming on the other end of the line, "No matter what, go home early tonight. Special Assistant Su has a family. How can you let him work overtime with you? No matter how important your work is, put it aside and let Special Assistant Su go home for the new year." Ming heard what Xiao Ziqing said and said, "Okay, if there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." Xiao Ziqing snorted and hung up the phone first, not giving Ming a chance to do so. After hanging up the phone, Xiao Ziqing looked at the young assistant beside her and said, "I know you have a good relationship with my son, but I am Ming's mother. I have the right to know what he has done. Special Assistant Su, next time you find out that he has gone to look for that woman, or if you have any news about that woman, I hope you can tell me. I will not mistreat you." Hearing this, Su Cheng smiled slightly, nodded and said, "Yes, madam, I will definitely tell you everything I know." Xiao Ziqing was satisfied. She looked at the dessert in her hand and said, "Drink this dessert. It's good for your body." As he spoke, he placed the dessert cup on the table and turned to leave. Su Cheng looked at Xiao Ziqing's departing figure with a complicated look in his eyes. He glanced at the dessert she had just put down and sent a message to Ming. "Madam seems to have noticed something and asked me to report to her any news about Miss Yu." Ming saw the message and replied, "What do you say?" Special Assistant Su, I agreed, but I didn't say anything, and I won't say anything in the future. Seeing Su Cheng's reply, Ming put down the phone again. He turned his head and saw Yu Lily, who was obviously a little disappointed. Yu Lily was lying in bed. When she saw him looking at her, she smiled a little resentfully, which made him feel sorry for her. Chapter 1077. It was a simple question, but it made Ming's heart suddenly sour. Yu Lily's face was full of resentment and confusion, as well as a little embarrassment. He shifted his body slightly so that he was no longer pressing down on her. After taking off his jacket, he lay down beside her and kissed her hair gently. He whispered, "No, maybe my mother has some misunderstandings about you. She'll understand when I explain it to her." "Really?" Yu Lily was a little depressed. She looked up at Ming's face and smiled. "You should go back. Your mother should be waiting for you at home. I want to be with you." Ming leaned over and pressed her under his body. "I'll go back tomorrow." As he spoke, he lowered his head, and his lips were close to her face. Yu Lily slightly turned her head to avoid his kiss. Deep in her eyes, there was a clear sense of loss. She whispered, "You'd better go back. I don't want to do it now." Ming's eyes were slightly deep. He held her in his arms and said, "Then don't do it. Let's chat." Yu Lily heard that, turned over and faced him. Then she lowered her head and went into his arms. She held his waist with one hand and called, "Ming." "Yeah." Ming held her in his arms and kissed her head gently. "I'm here." "Ming, I am very curious about one thing, but I have never dared to ask you. Now I want to ask. Can you answer me?" Yu Lily looked up at him. Her dark eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of wet mist. Ming looked at her and clearly noticed her uneasiness. He reached out and gently brushed the hair on her forehead. "What's the matter?" Winter nights always came faster. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the light in the room was already dark. In the dim light, Ming's eyes looked particularly bright. A pair of sparkling eyes looked at him. They were filled with pity, love, guilt, and an inexplicable pity. Ming. Yu Lily looked at Ming. Her heart beat faster and faster. It was so fast that it was trembling. It was so fast that her heart was numb. Unconsciously, her grip on his clothes tightened as she asked, "Will you really marry me?" Ming hadn't expected her to ask such a question. He was startled, but he quickly looked at her firmly and said, "Yes." "Really?" "Of course." Ming looked at her. His big hand ran through her short hair. His peach blossom eyes were shining. "I won't marry another woman. I promise you, my wife is only you. Only you." Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat and buried herself in his arms. Ming looked down at her and said in a hoarse voice, "I will take care of my mother." Since Xiao Ziqing was in poor health, it was impossible for him to go against her. He could only convince her step by step. Now, the biggest obstacle between them was Yu Lily's identity. He hugged her and asked in a low voice, "You, have you seen your parents?" Chapter 1078. Her tone was light, as if it was not a big deal. When she spoke, there was a helpless smile on her face. "Stop it." Ming reached out and gently stroked her hair. "Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Do you have any plans?" "I'll draw at home." Yu Lily smiled. "I have nowhere to go anyway. Except for the 3 years I was with you. I had to work on New Year's Eve every year. Now that I finally don't have to work, of course, I have to wake up naturally and then work. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Don't work. I'll take you out to play." "When?" "Now." Ming pulled her up. "I'll take you to second brother's house." "Is there anything fun in their house?" "Yes, they have 3 children." Yu Lily was speechless. "Play with children?" Dash dummy challenge begin. As soon as the sweet voice fell, Li Jianxian and Li Mosen stopped what they were doing. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve, and Nanny Rong had already started her annual leave. Su Qianxi was reading in the study. Hearing the sound, she called, "Day Su, see who's here." However, there was no response. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell continued to ring. Su Qianxi closed her book and walked out. As soon as she went out, she saw 3 little guys, each in a very strange posture, maintaining a motionless posture. Li Jianyue was holding a big doll, sitting on the sofa, in the most normal posture. As for the other 2, Li Jianxian maintained a running posture, and Li Mosen's mouth was open as if he wanted to say something. His eyes were wide open, not even blinking. Seeing them like this, Su Qianxi knew they were playing some boring game again. Ignoring them, she went straight to the door and opened it. She clicked on the intercom screen and saw Yu Lily and Ming. Su Qianxi was quite surprised, but quickly opened the door and invited them in. Seeing Su Qianxi, Yu Lily felt a little warm. As soon as she entered, she gave Su Qianxi a big hug. Su Qianxi was dazed and looked at Ming. With a faint smile on his lips, Ming asked, "Is second brother here?" "He hasn't come back yet." "Come in." Su Qianxi opened the door and gently patted Yu Lily on the back. "What's wrong?" "I'm fine." Yu Lily smiled brightly. "Where's your child?" "They Sumosen, stop playing. We have guests." Hearing Su Qianxi's words, Li Jianxian immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and Li Mosen directly relaxed and sat on the ground. "I'm so tired." Li Mosen gasped, but he quickly stood up and said, "Hello, uncle." "Hello, auntie." Li Mosen was of mixed blood, with blue eyes and fair skin. He looked out of place with the other 2 children. However, Li Mosen was also extremely good-looking. He looked like a doll. Yu Lily was excited. She stepped forward, touched Li Mosen's little head, and said hello. Li Jianxian called out, "Uncle O, you're here. What would you like to drink?" Li Jianyue also got up from the sofa and greeted, "Hello, Auntie Lily." "Hello, Uncle Ming." Her voice was as sweet as cotton candy, very pleasant to listen to. Chapter 1079. "Sit down, I'll cut fruit for you," Su Qianxi said. Then she looked at Li Jianxian and said, "Day Su, go and get juice for Uncle and Auntie." "Okay," Li Jianxian responded, but Li Jianyue immediately shouted, "Mom, I'll go." Su Qianxi saw that she was so active, smiled, and said, "Okay, then you go." Li Jianyue happily put down the doll in her hand, and then walked to the kitchen with her short legs. The little nightdress on her body flew as she walked. She moved a small stool and climbed to the kitchen where the cups were placed. She took 2 cups and then went to get a tray. After putting down the cups, he carried the small stool to the door of the fridge, tiptoed to open the fridge door, and used all his strength to pull out a bottle of juice. After that, his pair of short hands carried the juice to the side of the table where the cups were placed. After stuffing the juice on the table, she returned the way she came and took the small stool back. After pouring 2 glasses of juice, Li Jianyue took the tray and walked to the sofa in the living room. Along the way, a pair of big black grape-like eyes stared at the 2 glasses of juice on the tray for fear of spilling it. Finally, after walking for a long time, seeing that the juice was safe and sound, she breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Uncle and Auntie, drink the juice." Lily's heart was about to melt. She picked up the 2 glasses of juice, put one in front of Ming, and held the other in her hand. "Thank you, Ursu. Auntie, you're welcome." Li Jianyue smiled happily, holding the tray and dancing. She cheered and walked toward the kitchen, shouting, "Mom, I'm done." And he also thanked Ursu. As her short legs moved, the pink princess nightgown on her body also moved along with them. Her bell-like laughter made people's hearts feel comfortable. Lily looked at Li Jianyue running, and the love and envy in her eyes became stronger. She took a sip of juice, and her eyes were deep. Li Jianxian and Li Mosin came out with a Rubik's Cube, ran to Ming and shouted, "Uncle O, you see, I can turn it now, and Mosin can do it too." "That's amazing," Ming praised, took the Rubik's Cube, and said, "Then Uncle will test you." Hearing this, Li Jianxian was a little excited. He nodded and said, "I also asked my father to buy me a very complicated toy. Mosin knows how to play, but I don't. I'll go get it." With that, he ran inside. Ming chuckled. Looking at the little guy who was excited to show off, he felt that the little guy was very similar to Li Xiqing when he was young. However, as Li Xiqing grew up, he became more introverted and composed. Li Mosin sat obediently at the side, took the Rubik's Cube from Ming's hand, and quickly turned it in his hand. Lily watched as Li Mosin turned the Rubik's Cube. She couldn't help but exclaim, "I don't even know how to play with this thing. Kids nowadays are too smart." Not all children are so quick-witted. Ming looked up with a smile on his lips. Second brother's children are all very smart. As he spoke, he looked up at Lily and said, "In the future, our children will be as smart as them." In the future, our children. Lily was still very confused about the future. Chapter 1080. Everything was still unknown. However, she wanted to be with him. She wanted to be with him, to live together, and to have children together. Seeing the softness deep in Ming's eyes, Lily smiled and nodded. "So be it. Cherish the present. Take one step at a time." Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of a pink figure. Turning her head, she saw Li Jianyue's chubby little hands holding a fruit platter. She was being very careful, as if she was afraid of dropping it. Feeling Lily's gaze on her, she smiled brightly and called out, "Auntie, have some fruit." Lily felt her heart soften. She went forward to take the fruit plate and said, "Come here. Auntie will feed you." "Thank you, Auntie, but I want to eat by myself." Dad said that if I can eat by myself in the future and don't drop it on my clothes, he will promise me one thing. Li Jianyue was a little proud as she spoke. She lowered her head and picked up an apple with a fruit fork. She held it out and said, "Auntie, have some fruit." "Thank you, Ursu." Lily took it with a smile in her eyes. Li Jianyue was indescribably happy to be thanked by Ming. She smiled and reached out her short hand to grab a fruit fork. She inserted a dragon fruit into it and ran towards Ming, shouting, "Uncle, eat some fruit." Ming took it, gently rubbed her little head, and said, "Thank you." Li Jianyue smiled happily and shouted, "You're welcome." Then she inserted 2 more and handed them to Li Mosen and Li Jianxian. Just after the 2 little guys took it, the sound of the door opening came from outside. When Li Xiqing came in and saw Ming and Yu Lili, he was surprised. "Dad!" Li Jianyue shouted happily. She ran toward Li Xiqing with her short legs and shouted, "Dad, hug!" It was colder outside than inside. Li Xiqing's body was cold. Seeing that the little girl was only wearing a thin nightdress, he moved aside and said, "Dad is cold. I will hug you later." Then he closed the door and took his daughter's hand. "Have you said hello to Uncle and Auntie?" "Yes. I poured juice for Uncle and Annie and invited them to eat fruit. I also ate it. It didn't fall on me. Look." As she spoke, she shook off Li Xiqing's hand, spun around, and yelled, "Isn't it great?" Li Xiqing had been busy all day. Seeing his daughter like this, he chuckled and said, "Great, my daughter is the best. Where's Mommy?" "Mom is boiling sweet water for Uncle and Annie." Li Jianyue hugged Li Xiqing's leg and said, "Dad, you promise me that as long as I don't drop food on my body, you will promise me one thing." Li Xiqing's smile widened, and a smile appeared in his cold eyes. Because of this smile, his originally cold and distinct facial features softened a lot. Bending down, he picked up his daughter and walked inside. He asked, "What do you want me to promise you?" Su Qinzi asked, "I want to sleep with Daddy and Mommy. Other children sleep with Daddy and Mommy. I want to sleep too." "Who said that? Do you see the 2 brothers sleeping with Mom and Dad?" Little Red Flower next door said that she always sleeps with her parents. Li Jianyue rolled her round eyes and said, "Daddy is an adult. You can't go back on your words. Dash." Chapter 1081. Looking at the serious look on the little girl's face, Li Xiqing suddenly felt a headache. Li Jianyue saw that her father did not speak, so she tilted her head and said, "Dad, are you really going to go back on your word?" Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows, held the little girl, and said, "How could I? But Dad said that as long as I can do it, I will definitely agree, right?" Li Jianyue heard this and nodded. "But this thing, Dad can't do it." When Li Xiqing said this, his expression did not change, and he said seriously, "This is something that can't be done, so Dad is not going back on his word." Li Jianyue heard this, and her little eyebrows frowned, and she asked unhappily, "Why?" Ming and Yu Lili sat on the sofa and saw Li Xiqing's serious look of coaxing a child, and they couldn't help but laugh. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen, the 2 little guys, looked over, and they all had doubts, waiting for Li Xiqing's next words. They saw that Li Xiqing put Li Jianyue aside and said seriously, "Because if there is one more person in the bed, your mother will not be able to sleep." Hearing this, Li Jianyue's face was full of doubt. However, when she saw the serious look on her father's face, she was immediately intimidated and asked, "Really? Really?" Li Xiqing nodded, and there was no hint of lying on his face. Ming couldn't help but laugh, and he turned his head and looked at Yu Lili. Yu Lili's pair of eyes looked at the little girl who was scared, and her smile became wider, as if it was full of the glory of maternal love. So beautiful. Yu Lili's smile was more charming than that of the father and daughter. "Dad, I don't believe it." Li Jianyue's voice was indescribably serious, and she said, "In the past, when Dad didn't come home, Ursu often slept with Mom, but Mom could fall asleep. One more is fine, but not 2. That will make Mom uncomfortable," Li Xiqing said with a straight face. "Humph. Then Dad can sleep with Brother, and I can sleep with Mom." "That won't do either. If Daddy doesn't sleep with Mommy, he won't be able to sleep." Li Jianyue was furious. She placed her hands on her hips and shouted, "Daddy, you are too childish. You are already so old, yet you still want to sleep with Mommy. You're already in your 30s. Can't you be more mature?" When he said that, both Ming and Yu Lili burst out laughing. When Su Qinzi walked out with the sweet soup, she happened to hear what the little girl said. She smiled and shouted, "Ursu, how can you talk to Daddy like that?" Li Jianyue snorted and crossed her arms over her chest. She turned around and shouted, "Mommy, Ursu wants to sleep with Mommy tonight. Ursu has to be obedient." Li Xiqing did not wait for Su Qianxi to speak. He picked up his daughter and said, "For the sake of Mom and Dad's health, you can't sleep with Mom and Dad. Change the condition." "No, I want to sleep with Mommy." "Daddy, you go sleep with Big Brother." Li Jianhua was very stubborn. She had no intention of being persuaded at all. She shouted, "I want to nurture Daddy's independent thinking and ability, just like how Daddy nurtures my brothers. You have to grow up by yourself. Do you understand, Daddy?" Chapter 1082. When Li Xiqing heard that, he slowly turned his head and looked at Ming. However, his eyes were cold. When he glanced at him, the smile on Ming's face immediately disappeared. He coughed and said, "This is a good way of education. It's very amiable." Li Xiqing retracted his gaze and said in a low voice, "Well said." Then he looked at his daughter and said, "Little one, Dad has grown up. He is different from you. You are different. Dad is an adult, but you're still like a child. You are not mature at all." Li Jianhua pouted and said, "You can't be like this." Li Xiqing laughed and pinched her little nose. He said, "Go eat dessert with the brothers. Dad will talk to the uncles." "Can I eat here?" Li Jianhua looked at Li Xiqing with a pair of round eyes. "Yes, you can eat here." Yu Lily quickly waved her hand and said, "Qian, let me help you." "Okay." Su Qianxi nodded. After putting down the sweet soup, she took the bowl and began to serve the children. Li Xiqing looked at Ming and asked, "Looking for me?" "No, I just wanted to bring you Lily to see the children." Ming looked at the little girl sitting next to Li Xiqing. "Your daughter is really not like you at all." She looked like Su Qianxi, and her character was very different from Li Xiqing's. She was also very talkative. It was good to raise a daughter. Ming began to piece together Yu Lily's face and his own in his mind. If her character was like Yu Lily, then it was over. He couldn't take care of two grandmothers. It was better to raise a son. Second brother's son was also raised well. He was not naughty and smart. As he thought about it, he looked at Yu Lily. With a smile on her face, Yu Lily happened to look over at Ming. Ming chuckled and said, "Tomorrow is the new year. Do you have any plans?" "What other plans can I have? I will take the children back to the old house and celebrate the new year with the family." Li Xiqing took a small bowl from Su Qianxi. After testing the temperature, he handed it to his daughter and said, "Be careful. It's hot. Eat slowly." "Okay." Li Jianhua held the small bowl and looked at the soup inside. She was about to drool. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen also wanted to eat and looked at Li Jianhua's small bowl. However, this was the way things were in this family. If there was good food and fun things to do, Mom and little sister would have them first. The two of them would come second, and Dad would be last. Seeing that Li Jianhua started to dig and eat, two pairs of eyes looked at her, and then at Su Qianxi. "Have you two boys finished your homework?" Li Xiqing looked at them and asked casually. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen answered in unison, "Done." With that, they ran towards the room together. The two little guys ran up the stairs together. Su Qianxi was shocked and shouted, "Be careful, don't fall." "I won't." Li Jianxian replied and quickly went up with Li Mosen. Ming looked at the two little guys and gave Li Xiqing a thumbs up. Yu Lily said, "It's too obvious that you value women over men. It's nice to be your daughter." Chapter 1083. Hearing that, Li Xiqing didn't seem to find it inappropriate at all. He said, "Daughters are meant to be spoiled. Only when they're spoiled can they harm other people's sons. It's not that easy to marry our daughter." As he spoke, he didn't forget to squint at Ming and said matter-of-factly, "As for boys, of course, they must be able to shoulder the responsibility. Otherwise, how can they protect their sister in the future, right?" "That's right." Ming deeply agreed. Li Xiqing's words really touched the bottom of his heart. There should be a limit. Look at your daughter. Mom said she is a bit spoiled. Su Qianxi gently pushed Li Xiqing, a bit dissatisfied. Li Xiqing chuckled. "All right, you should teach her what she needs to be taught." Hearing that, Su Qianxi didn't want to talk to him anymore. She turned to look at Yu Lily and asked, "What are you going to do tomorrow?" Yu Lily's current identity was a bit awkward. If Ming went home, wouldn't Yu Lily be destined to be alone? Thinking of this, Su Qianxi suddenly realized the real reason why Ming brought Lily here today. Understanding everything, Su Qianxi walked in the direction of Lily and sat down next to her. She said, I happen to have 2 tickets for the art exhibition. Why don't we go together? Li Xiqing heard that and turned to look at Su Qianxi, slightly raising his eyebrows. Yesterday, he said that he wanted the 2 of them to go together to get rid of the children and go to a world of just the 2 of them. How did it become a world of just the 2 of them now? Su Qianxi didn't seem to notice Li Xiqing's gaze. She looked at Lily expectantly and asked, How is it? Lily clearly noticed Li Xiqing's strange look. Thinking about it, she said, Don't you need to stay at home with your family? Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. It doesn't matter. After tomorrow, I will be free at night. We will go at night. The art exhibition starts at 7 p.m. When we go, we can just watch the fun. Lily wanted to go, but she had nothing to do anyway. Every year on New Year's Eve, Ming would stay at home. He would only come over to be with her in the afternoon on the first day of the year. This year will be no exception. She subconsciously glanced at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing also noticed her gaze and said, Go ahead. I'll take the kids to see the fireworks tomorrow. After you're done with the art exhibition, come back and play with us. Does that mean I'm inviting Lily to celebrate the new year with me? Lily was pleasantly surprised, and her heart warmed. She nodded her head and said happily, Okay, that's settled then. See you tomorrow night. She nodded and looked at Ming. Ming didn't say anything. He just looked at Lily with a smile on his face. The 2 little guys, Li Jianxian and Li Mosin, finally came down from upstairs, each holding a box in their hands. After they went downstairs, they walked in the direction of Lily and Ming. Uncle, Auntie, this is for you, Li Jianxian and Li Mosin said at the same time and stuffed the boxes into their arms. Lily and Ming were a little surprised and looked at the 2 little guys. Chapter 1084. It's all in here. After Li Jianxian stuffed the box into Ming's arms, his little face was full of seriousness, and he said, Uncle, this is a gift from the 3 of us and our blessings. Please open it and have a look. The 3 of you made it? Ming felt a little strange. You went up for so long just to do this? No, we are sharing the blessings, giving half of them to you and the other half to you, Li Mosin said with a serious face. This is also the homework that Dad gave us. Ming chuckled, took it, and said, What kind of homework is this? I thought it was some kind of exercise, but I didn't expect it to be so different. Did you arrange it for them? It was their mother's idea. I arranged it. Li Xiqing was very satisfied with his reaction, and he looked a little proud. The main thing is to test the children's perseverance and patience. Congratulations on being the first guest of our family. You are lucky. When Ming heard that, he felt that Li Xiqing was full of the sour smell of happiness. At the same time, he did not forget to look in the direction of Lily. Lily had already taken the lead and opened the lid. When she saw the box full of colorful flowers, her eyes were filled with amazement. She exclaimed, Did you guys make this? Li Mosin was young, but he was very sensitive. Seeing Lily's obviously amazing appearance, he felt excited from the bottom of his heart. Li Mosin nodded and said, I made Xin, Ursu made the stars, and Desu made the paper cranes inside. This is the homework that Dad gave us a few days ago. Each of us has to make 199 folded papers. As he spoke, he looked at Lily's eyes, and his speech became slower and slower. His face became redder and redder, and he lowered his head slightly, looking quite helpless. Lily saw that Li Mosin was nervous, smiled, hugged his little head, kissed him gently on the forehead, and said, That's great. Annie likes it very much. If my son could be as good as you in the future, that would be great. When Li Mosin heard that, he almost jumped with joy. He looked up at Lily, nodded, and said with a red face, Thank you, Auntie. In the future, your children will definitely be better than us. The smile on Lily's face widened, and she couldn't believe that such modest words came from the mouth of a 5-year-old child. Such a child could be seen from his family's education. No wonder he was the child of Li Siqing and Su Qianxi. He taught him better than anyone else. The little boy, Li Jianxian, who was standing not far from Oming, heard Li Mosen's words and said, "We made 199 each. We gave Uncle and Annie 99 each. There's still one more here." Li Jianxian took out a few pieces of paper from his pocket, pink hearts, white cranes, and yellow stars. Li Jianyue took a mouthful of sweet soup and asked in confusion, "Li Jianyue?" Chapter 1085. Ursu held a small bowl and nodded. Her eyes lit up, and she said, "So that's how it is. Brother's so amazing." "Of course, I am your brother." Li Jianxian was not modest at all. He raised his face and said naturally. Li Jianxian and Li Jianyue had 2 children who were only 4 years old this year. Yu Lily looked at the 2 of them. Her eyes were filled with envy and emotion. These children were so smart. It was not like the flexibility and intelligence of their age. It was hard to imagine that such a smart child was a child who had lost 4 years of fatherly love. "Brother Mosen is also very good." Li Jianyue held the small bowl and said, "Mom, I want more. You can't eat anymore. You can't eat so much at night." Li Siqing took her small bowl down and put it on the table. Then he took a tissue and wiped the corner of her mouth. He looked at the residue on her nightgown and said, "Look at your clothes. What is this?" When Li Jianyue heard that, she blinked her eyes and looked down at her clothes. She exclaimed, "What's going on? You have to ask yourself. What did you do?" Li Siqing said as he wiped her, "You have no right to make conditions now." "No." Li Jianyue was anxious and shouted, "Dad, you must be cheating. Dad framed me, right?" Li Siqing raised his hand and pinched her little face. He said, "Little bad girl, who did you learn from? You actually want to frame your father?" Li Jianyue pouted and said unhappily, "I don't care. Dad is bad. I just want to sleep with Mom." "No," Li Siqing said faintly. "You have grown up and have to sleep by yourself. You see that your brothers are very strong. Why do you like to cheat so much?" "I don't." Li Jianyue was even more aggrieved. She sat on the sofa and pouted. She looked at Su Qianxi and said, "Mom, it's useless to call Mom. I have the final say on this matter." Li Siqing covered her eyes mercilessly and said, "Mosen, take your sister back to sleep." Li Mosen quietly breathed a sigh of relief and walked over happily. He said, "Let's go, Ursu. I will take you back to sleep." "I don't want to. I don't want to." Li Jianyue looked like she was about to cry. "I just want to sleep with Mommy." "Daddy, sleep with brother. Why do you want to sleep with Mummy?" Su Qianxi walked over, held her daughter in her arms, and said, "Ursu, you have to listen to Daddy, so that Daddy will love you more in the future." "No, I don't want to sleep with my brothers anymore." Granny Rong said that girls can't sleep with boys. Li Jianyue pouted. Men and women can't be separated clearly. If it was in ancient times, I would be put into a pig's cage and drowned with a big rock. Oming couldn't help laughing and said, "That's called drowning in a pig cage." "Yes, drowning him in a pig cage." Li Jianyue held Su Qianxi's hand and said pitifully, "I don't want to drown. Mom, I want to sleep with you." Seeing this, not only Oming, but Yu Lily and Su Qianxi also laughed together. Li Siqing felt a little helpless. He reached out and grabbed her, saying, "They are your brothers. You are still young and can't sleep alone. Your brothers will take care of you." Chapter 1086. Li Jianyue almost cried as she spoke. She waved her hands and shouted at Su Qianxi, "Mom, look, Dad is bullying me." Li Siqing held his daughter's collar and smiled helplessly. He said, "Little one, you still know to ask for help. Be quiet." Li Jianyue immediately shut up and became quiet. She turned her head and looked at Su Qianxi pitifully. She said, "Mom, you don't help me." Su Qianxi laughed out loud. She reached out her hands and held the little one in her arms. She said, "Okay, sleep with Mom tonight. Let Dad sleep with your brothers." "No." One big and one small, they said in unison. Li Siqing and Li Mosen looked at each other. Li Siqing raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Mosen. The little one met Li Siqing's gaze, and her overly white face began to blush. She bowed her head slightly and said, Ursu, Dad and Mom are husband and wife. They should sleep together. You can't sleep with them. That way, you will become a third party. Oming was even choked by his saliva. Why did this family not play by the rules? Is this a third party? Who taught you that? Yu Lily shook her head with a smile and said, Third parties are not like this. Only those who destroy the relationship between husband and wife are called third parties. Do you know that? Yes, this is a third party. Li Siqing nodded and looked at Li Mosin with a touch of appreciation in his eyes. He said, Ursu, you are destroying the relationship between Mom and Dad. Do you know that? Li Jianhua blinked, looked at Li Siqing, and then looked at Su Qianxi. She was a little confused and asked, Mom, really? Su Qianxi was speechless for a while and didn't know what to say. Really? Of course not. But since Li Siqing said so, she couldn't tell the truth at this time. How could he face the children like this? For a moment, she was in a dilemma. Oming coughed softly and said, Ursu, Uncle can prove that you're not a third party. But if you do this, you are no different from a third party. Don't do this kind of thing, understand? When Li Jianhua heard that, she pursed her lips. Her big eyes were moist. She looked at Oming and said in disbelief, Really? Oming nodded with a serious look on his face. It's true, so you have to listen to me. As he spoke, he glanced at the time and said, It's almost 9 o'clock. Aren't you going to bed yet? Mosin, Daesu, take your sister to bed. Su Qianxi immediately followed his words and said, Yes, go, and take your sister to bed. Li Mosin was the first to run up and said, Ursu, let's go. Li Jianhua's tears were in her eyes, and they were about to fall. However, she still climbed down from Su Qianxi's body and followed Li Mosin. However, as her little feet stepped on the ground, her body trembled. She looked back at Su Qianxi 3 times with every step and sniffed before following Li Mosin up the stairs. Li Jianxian said, Dad, Mom, I'm going too. Go ahead. He nodded, waved his hand, and whispered, Remember to make your sister happy. Okay. Li Jianxian nodded and ran up the stairs. Be careful. Su Qianxi shouted behind him, Walk slowly. Don't run. Chapter 1087. After the children went up, Li Siqing picked up the dessert bowl that Su Qianxi had just put down in front of him and scooped a mouthful. Oming stared at it and said with some surprise, I thought you don't eat sweets? Li Siqing heard the words, glanced at Oming indifferently, and said, What do you know? My wife's cooking is very delicious. Su Qianxi's cheeks were slightly red, and her ears were hot. She said, No. He was talking nonsense. However, seeing Li Siqing's serious look, Oming was also skeptical, so he also picked up his bowl and took a bite. Li Siqing's eyes were fixed on Oming, as if Oming said one bad word, he could beat him at any time. Oming nodded seriously, looked at Su Qianxi, and said, It's really good, very delicious. Sister-in-law's cooking is good. Su Qianxi blushed even more and reached out to pat Li Siqing. Li Siqing looked back, took another bite, and said, Honey, yes. Su Qianxi looked up at Li Siqing and raised her eyebrows in surprise. Do you think that boy Mosin likes our daughter? What kind of like do you mean? Su Qianxi looked at Li Siqing, her eyes wide. How is it possible? They said they are brother and sister. He himself knows that we are not related by blood, and he has been trembling with us. But he doesn't say it, and he is very careful in his behavior. Did you notice? Li Siqing said indifferently, and there was a hint of thought in his deep and cold eyes. Impossible. He treats her as a sister, and such a small child. How can he know so many things? Su Qianxi denied. Don't think too much. Children are still young. Yu Lily also thought that Li Siqing was thinking too much, and said, That child is Tang Minjing's child, right? He is only 5 years old this year, and he can't have that kind of feeling. He is good to her. Isn't it normal for siblings? When Oming heard this, he slightly raised his eyebrows and suddenly thought of the word no that Li Mosin and Li Siqing had said at the same time. At that time, he felt that this little guy, who looked young, was very sensible. However, after Li Siqing's reminder, there was still a bit of that feeling. However, could such a young child really have such thoughts? After thinking about it, Ming said, I think it's possible. Your daughter is pretty and cute. Which boy wouldn't like her? When Li Siqing heard this, he felt as if he had finally found a soulmate. He said, right? You think so too. We really can't let them live together anymore. Ursu is right. It's not good for men and women to not touch each other. Ursu kicks off her blanket when she sleeps at night. She can't sleep alone. Su Qianxi looked at Li Siqing and said, at night, Mosin will cover Ursu with the quilt. Desu will occasionally wake up to drink water and cover her with the quilt. If it were up to you, our daughter would have frozen to death. As if he didn't hear the rebuke in her words, he said, then buy a sleeping bag, tie her up, and let her out the next day. Isn't that better? She glared at him and kicked him rudely. Are you raising a child or an animal? That is your daughter. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.